back to ALGS. The Split 1 playoffs have begun. It's time. The best crowd in esports. Make some noise. And I think as we get ready for game number 1.
Look at the bodies. It's a graveyard down here.
Can he get the double? Yes, he does. Going for the triple kill to kick off the ALGS playoffs in London.
He's going to be hitting some big
Oh
shots.
my goodness, the damage.
The Bravers are finally landing.
Guard is going to win this game.
Ascend will pick up the win.
Oh, he's like, he punches him.
Are you kidding me?
He's on main. It should work out. Peekaboo. Let's go to the Braver. He's going to go in and finish off the damage as well.
Setting a world record.
23 kills. $1 million is on the line today. It is a shootout. I'm going to move forward to become the champions here in London. You want the money? You get the damage. Here it comes. TSM up in the skies. House goes down for the heavens. London belongs to TSM.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Emea Challenger Circuit stream. My name is Tiny Shiny, joined by the ever wonderful Dia as we prepare to move through the remainder of our Challenger Circuits event here. Dia, we've had some incredible stories zoned through both our first and second events, leading us all the way up to today's match.
My favorite thing about Challenger Circuits nowadays, Molly, is that they can come back. We've got both of the victors from the previous match days returning today, and I love seeing how that is going to interact with the new meta and the lead up to ultimately playoffs that are coming up, and I'm sure a lot of these teams are taking inspiration from.
Oh, absolutely. We've had some major changes come through with the actual game itself, how the Evo Shield changes, how the game is played overall, and how teams can continue to adapt as the Challenger Circuits are beginning to wind down. We'll go ahead and take a look at the year overview as a whole, see the journey that the teams have taken to get all the way up to this point.
So right now, for those of you who may be seeing this for the first time, we're where we got the little red square inside of the white square. It's still very, very early on in the year, but as you said, Molly, these teams are starting to wind down the Challenger Circuit. We're in our last two now, the second half of what will take place over the course of this first split, after which all the best teams from Challenger Circuit will have a chance to go up against the worst teams from Pro League, or maybe the unluckiest teams from Pro League, and qualify themselves into professional Apex Legends.
And a lot of that is decided today. We're now within the second half of our current Challenger Circuit 1. Two teams have already qualified and guaranteed a spot in these Pro League qualifiers coming on up, whereas the rest are going to be fighting for one spot today, as well as the circuit points. So we're going to go ahead and take a bit more of a breakdown on what those rewards are actually going to look like throughout the day, and how these teams will be playing across our 6 games.
So, for the course of today's games, like you said, Molly, it is going to be 6 of them. However, 3 of them will take place on World's Edge, the other 3 on Storm Point. So we will have a chance to switch up our strategies, our comps, whatever you like to fit the 2 competitive matches. You also made mention of circuit points, or Challenger Circuit points earlier, and for the purpose of today's broadcast, we won't be discussing them much. They're pretty finicky, and they actually go per player as opposed to per team. So for today's purposes, it's really going to matter who gets first place and ultimately puts themselves in the best position to get the most Challenger Circuit points per player. That's what we'll be focusing on, and as you mentioned, the guaranteed qualification that comes with that.
Yeah, first place, that's where every team wants to be in any form of competition, but especially in terms of today, having a guaranteed spot to go onto these qualifiers is going to be a major asset moving forwards throughout the ALGS splits. And, you know, not only are these teams learning points throughout the circuit, but also let's take a bit of a deeper look at where they're going to be gaining those points throughout the day today. Two main ways that they're going to go ahead and do that through both placement and elimination. Dia, you and I were talking a little bit more about, especially in these challenger circuit, how there's teams that often go for more of these elimination points.
It's very true, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that there will be teams that you're seeing show up in the finals again, and teams that you're seeing in the finals during this Challenger Circuit 3 for the very first time. There's a lot of inexperience, even in the finals, that while mechanically talented, may not be able to go up against some of the better repeating teams. And it will be the better repeating teams that are now competing for their chance to pick up as many kills as possible. You pick up a squad wipe, you're essentially already 6th. You pick up 2, you're almost at 3rd. And the acceleration, the pace of game that we see in Challenger Circuit tends to be so much faster because those at the top are looking to perhaps find and scare those teams that may not have the competitive experience yet.
It's like this predatory circle that we end up going in with a lot of these top teams, and that will really be on the hunt throughout the day. And they're on familiar playing grounds. We'll get a peek at the maps too. 2 different maps throughout the day, starting on Storm Point for our first 3, then over to World's Edge for the second half. And especially with some of these new changes, how you're going to get your Evo shields built up, the way that these teams are spreading out how they're going to play the game is going to vary from Challenger circuits in the past.
Yeah, right now with the Evo Harvesters likely being the most immediate form of how will we rotate, you'll see a lot of teams delaying, doing a little bit more PvE than they might have, but you'll also see a lot less teams full sending it into zone. It used to be that in Challenger Circuit we would get a few squads that did just feel good jumping into the middle of zone, predicting where that's going to be. Well, with the lack of zone predictability that's happened after recent patches, and the way that this particular Evo system does not reward you quick rotating into zone, those teams have really suffered a loss and are unlikely to have even made it to today.
No, and we're actually going to see quite a few new faces when we look at our day matchup. The 20 teams that are in here, you have 2 that have already qualified previously in both Trojan and NPC, securing wins in both the first and second weeks of Challenger Circuit, but you also have a lot of new faces like Odyssey, OKS for example, that are going to be looking to make their name known today.
Funny thing about this as well is that while we've got this great mix of old and new, we can take that and throw it out even older. I'm looking specifically at 3rd seed out of the first group, Yippee. You'll find them on the right side of your screen and next to the number 13. These numbers for now don't mean much. We're just using them to organize teams, but later on this will be demonstrating what team is in what place. At the current moment, Yippee have played actually in some Challenger circuits already, but this is their first appearance in the finals. What you'll notice is that with the return of Adam, we've got a new face, WeakQ, and a very, very familiar one to viewers who've been watching competitive Apex since the beginning as Desu, who used to play in Pro League, played with 789, jumped down a little while to Challenger Circuit during last year and couldn't quite eke out the Pro League, now has returned with a new squad, and that is a team that I'm very excited to see the story of.
Yippee in particular, we talked about Desu being this experienced veteran on her team, and players like WeakQ, an 18-year-old that's coming into this competition and really trying to make his first appearance up in that Pro League. So it's kind of the story of combining this veteran and new talent. You'll see that on several of the squads here today. Red Dragon is another example of them. Previously known as Pot in the first 2 Challenger Circuit, have been hit with a 2nd place curse, always the groom to the bride, as we've seen through far. And even in the semifinals, qualifying for this today, they still fell 2nd to the likes of NPC, and they're coming in today. Yes, plenty of circuit points to go around with their team, but yet to guarantee themselves a safe spot within the Pro League qualifier.
It's very true. One of the other things we'll be mentioning today, and I may as well bring it up right now, is that because of the Challenger Circuit points that you accumulate over the course of each competition, we've got people who qualified into today, and we've got their seed or their placement in the overall Challenger Circuit. So though Red Dragon have finished second both times, they are first in the overall standings. This doesn't mean anything for right now. I mean, it means that they're likely going to qualify for the
Yeah.
PLQ, but it doesn't mean that it's assured. It doesn't mean that it's locked in. Whereas other teams like Yippee that I mentioned earlier are 40th seed. You'll see a :D, just listing teams at this point, are 48th seed. And this, the lower that, or I guess the higher that number goes, the more today means in your competition, in your tournament journey, because you have a lot more space to make up until you hit the top 22 Challenger Circuit teams that will ultimately fight it out in the PLQ.
And not to mention, too, this is also the second to last Challenger Circuit that you're going to have. We've made it halfway through this entire season, so even more importance needs to be emphasized for those teams that are perhaps making their first appearance within the top 20, which there's at least 6, if I remember correctly, just in this lineup here today. And when we kick off ourselves to Storm Points, when all the said is done there, I mean, that's where they're going to be able to make their mark, how they're going to decide where their story will end up going. Of course, we're going to talk a little bit more now that we're getting into the character selection itself, what we've been seeing in terms of a meta, and so far, Dia, not too many surprises.
No, I did mention this when we were talking yesterday, that we may see some teams moving away from either the Caustic or the Bangalore in favor of a Horizon, and we do have a pickup of that. I am really surprised that we're getting a Watson in Challenger Circuit, a area of the ALGS that is typically defined by aggression is going to take a slightly different turn when we look at how that'll play out. Before we, or rather, as we jump in as well, I do want to highlight that there are a couple expected contests on both maps. On this one, we're looking at Ceto Station, where it should be Octane Genetics and Meow, who have declared that they will be going head-to-head. We'll see how it plays out in reality.
Interesting. It's sort of like a gentleman's agreement of where they opt to go ahead and land. It depends on if you decide to take that early contest, especially when you talked about earlier how a lot of these higher seeded teams that perhaps have more experience or a perceived higher skill level are going to be hunting for those lower spots. Little fear that they have as they begin to drop down. So far, the board seems relatively spread out. Ghost in particular opting to move away from their typical landing spots instead of going to Barometer.
Yeah, funnily enough, teams have chosen to avoid fighting early. Even Octane Genetics, who would have had a POI to contest for, have moved out to south of Command Center. And this is especially interesting given the fact that Meow declared late. Meow now have 3 Evo Harvesters super close to them and very easy access to zone as well, should they be able to gather that information.
Meow is the one team that didn't really make their mark known, and it's coming back in beautiful ways right now with the luck of the draw in terms of the spawn. You'll get that early Evo on up, and some big things for them to look out going forwards, especially being in that early zone pick, which you mentioned a little bit, Dia. It can either be very beneficial for some of these teams who want to bunker down, but you also have a lot less access to the majority of the map. Some of these players, especially when you need to build up your shields in a new way.
Meow taking inspiration from DSG in North America, perhaps making their own way and just arriving at the same conclusion. The result, however, will be the same, that they are one of the teams running Wraith during today's games, who has become an increasingly powerful rotational legend during the course of this season, and yet has ultimately not been, has been passed up largely in popularity, because you'll notice that Meow now don't have access to the Bangalore, something that many squads would deem essential.
And Bangalore really has been the no-brainer pick for so many teams within Challengers, Circuit, ALGS, wherever you look. Bangalore exists. The value you can gain from the smokes is outmatched in many situations. So Juso going over to the Wraith, as you said, Dia, is rather unconventional. You're looking for teams to make these greater rotations, have access that way, but when it comes all set and done, especially when they get their first contest in the later part of this game, how that's going to come back to affect them.
Now, you and I did mention just before we got into today's games that the zone has become more and more difficult to predict during the last not even full like season patch, just micro patch. Things have drastically changed. It's affected a lot of pro teams, and it's why we're seeing this long setup from teams like Meow. I am surprised, however, to see that window cleaners have made a southern rotation, won't be prioritizing the next zone, instead likely fighting over the Evo Harvester in front of them, wanting to make sure the path is clear for them to finally get up to blues, because right now a squad on whites has no perks, no health, no nothing.
No, and that's why these early games are increasingly more important, why you choose to avoid some of these early contests until you can guarantee grabbing an Evo drop, using some of your role passives in order to build that. And even in that moment, OKS could have easily taken a fight with window cleaners, but opted to go the other direction. But now, Dia, as we're seeing the blue shields come into play, that's what the story's gonna be.
Yeah, trying to make your way through these doors is tough. Cole and D are defending, and we already know that Cascade is shooting this team in the back. It should just be a complete disengage as much as you can. Mies is not going to get back into the game, but Free Sosa will largely survive for now. Cole and D get a bit of loot. That's exactly why you play through the corridors with Caustic, just to pick up a few KP here and there as Cole and D continue to move into zone.
They're gonna keep their move on. Not given Free Sosa at least something to think about, but not opting to go for the continuous chase, prioritizing that zone, will find themselves under a little bit of fire as they start that rotation on over. Luckily, again, this is where that smoke comes into play. You have the additional cover to kind of move through, continue that looting process.
And with Caustic, when Bang Smoke runs out, you got more smoke. It's a different color, but smoke is smoke.
It's just the life of an Apex player, not being able to see anything at all times.
Except Bloodhound.
Except Bloodhound, yeah. Bloodhound, maybe a Digi-Threat can help you out a tad, but at the end of the day, you got green smoke, some white smoke. That's just kind of how it be sometimes. And Cole and D are looking to set themselves up more now, being in a later zone pick. There's no reason for them to necessarily aggress here. Steady has all the poison canisters in the world you could possibly want, and they're okay, just kind of hanging out on the side. Meanwhile, looks like we're popping over on the other part of the map,
Yeah, Central Ceto has become pretty populated, and we aren't seeing a whole lot of teams really hard predict anything. Instead, a lot of these are movable positions where you should be able to rotate out of them pretty easily. Say nobody holding the top of the center of Ceto, that would be a little bit more of a hard commit to that area. Instead, by playing on low ground, everybody's keeping their options open, and in the next couple of seconds, we should get at least some squads that have the privilege of sitting around the outside of ring and understanding even further where this zone is pulling, getting the opportunity to pick up an advantage themselves. I am really wondering, though, Shiny, where is our Watson team? Because we know there's at least one, and Watson is a lot less mobile than these other legends.
And that's one of those few instances where you would want to try and play this zone, right? And even then, we haven't really seen much of that impact, especially over here in Ceto, where a lot of these squads are bunkering down with that knowledge. And what do you really want to do if you're placing on towards this edge side, and you got teams like Cold Revenge, for example, that are all kind of bunkering down, waiting for somebody else to make that move? If you're having that Watson on your team, you are automatically at a disadvantage because of it.
I'm really glad that Cold Revenge are taking some note of Lifeline. I think a lot of people wrote off Lifeline now that she no longer has access to care package weapons and instead just gets gold knockdown. But man, would I take a gold knockdown on Lifeline every single time. Still incredibly powerful in fights, and by combining that with a Valkyrie, the Cold Revenge have come with a really ingenious composition. Hopefully we'll get the chance to dive into it a little bit more later, as controllers are currently looking at them. But this fight, barring perhaps more controllers on one side than another, should be going pretty well in the favor of Cold Revenge, since they've got Lifeline to abuse.
I really want to see how that engagement plays out, but in fact, speaking of engagements, we're going to get our first one of the day. And call me data, but they're stuck out. Rockets raining down from above. above. No clear way in, yet they lose out on Horizon, one of the most experienced players that you're going to find here in this current Challengers circuit. Losing out on them. A massive blow later on. King Victor managed to get a little bit of tip damage, but didn't take the high ground above. End up falling. Is this going to be the early end of Call Me Data? It sure will. Our second squad to go down. A rather unfortunate turn for a team that we had some high expectations for.
Insta third party from NPC as well, wasting absolutely no time to come in, pick up a kill. They've even got a trident should they need to relocate, but at this point, you also got the option of swapping outside the ring for a quick second and hitting the ring console for some extra information. Especially once this next zone closes, that info that gives you a better idea of where God spots will be during the next ring is going to be super important, and I like that NPC hang out here, wait out this next zone close, and will then be able to access the ring scan that, oh my god, not only gives you information, but also a bunch of Evo.
This is just a great time for NPC to be alive, to be in the spot where they are. If you haven't been familiar with NPC in the past Challenger circuit, let me tell you, you are about to be now. They started this circuit with 101 points to secure them that spot. They're just here to secure themselves an even further seeding advantage as they get closer to that Pro League and taking out another top competitor within Trojan, who has also been pro-qualified. Yet, Dia, it looks like they're down quite a few people.
Yeah, perhaps the tables have turned. Last Challenger Circuit, NPC went from 1st to 11th in the finals.
Yep.
Trojan now getting aggressed upon a little bit. Do still have the meds to survive in the zone for a while, but you and I both know that NPC haven't really gone anywhere, so you will have to tank the red for a little while longer. Meanwhile, in Cedo, the actual game is being played out, which is quite funny. Goodfellas, unfortunately, have lost one, but OKS go down in the meantime, giving Goodfellas a nearly chance to recover before the bullets just fly in and end their life. 15 squads left. That means placement points have started to been collected. Everybody in the game right now, if you're still alive, you get a point.
Woo! Good for you. You guys get a point. Congratulations. You don't get a gold star yet. You can get one of those if you win, but for now, 1 point well on your way, guaranteeing you're not wasting an entire game. Ghost, though, squad that we didn't really have too many high expectations for, picking up that very first wipe, especially on the outside here of Cedo, where teams are still kind of hanging around. Outside of that one contest, they've all been rather civil with each other, just agreeing to exist within the same space.
No, and the honest thing is that there's no need to move with the way that the ring is revealing itself right now. It's still largely Cedo. Most people should be content, most players, most teams should be content to sit there, farm themselves up to purple perks, perhaps even beyond. We are seeing a little bit of that with our Lifeline squads, but the urgency doesn't really have to be there unless you are a squad that does want to fight, which we have seen a few instances of, where teams hard hitting onto each other around the edge and sometimes even in the center of the map.
And even to getting a look at that map, if you saw in the top left corner, more on that northwest side, that Trojan was able to get all three players back up on their feet, far out of zone, mind you. A lot of the top teams that have had great performances in the past are nowhere near this current zone. They're either waiting to pick up on these stragglers or opting to gain greater resources from the lack of opponents willing to contest them. Ghost, though, on the other side, has been one to kind of take these fights. They've been getting aggressive. Most shots fired easily been in their direction.
And Ghost are in a really interesting spot because right next to window cleaners, the engagement between these two teams is likely the most important one for the mid-game. Whoever wins this slide down fight that will happen in the next 30 seconds is going to have a massive advantage over other teams that will ultimately have to move to the south of Cedo during subsequent rings. Window cleaners hold high ground outside of Jurassic, but can they convert off of that high ground to win the game? We'll see.
Can Trojan get back to zone is another question that I have. They once again ran into NPC, Dia, for the second time and have lost 2 of their players. One, thankfully, isn't down to a banner just yet, but Trojan are really struggling to stay on their feet and actually get within the game today, whereas Ghost, they came here to win, they came here to play, facing off against Yippee down and below. That is our Watson team after all, and it seems like Dia, they're in a pretty decent position.
And the Ghost sat real close by. Ghost have actually opted out of controlling high ground for now, something that is going to be all right, still a playable position, but something they may come to regret a little bit later on. Calamitous looks for a bit of damage. His NPC goes down. That's going to be happening all the way out on the western side of the map. Nowhere near Ghost at the moment, but it has big impacts on them nonetheless.
Absolutely. I mean, NPC are a team you're expecting to come in, be a heavy hitter, be one of those primary predators, the apex predator that we were talking about at the very beginning of the day. To see them go down so much early is significant for teams like Calm, like Ghost, who want to make their mark within the Challengers circuit, Dia.
Let's go that way.
Calm took a long while this game, moving out of checkpoint, and now have sat in probably one of the hardest committing spots in Ceto. When the zone is here, man, is the top of Ceto good. When the zone eventually pulls south, this is going to be tough for Calm, who only have a few smokes to work with, do not have a caustic to follow that up, and instead have verticality from Valkyrie that in this case will get you nowhere else.
Check out this area.
No, not really much going on for Calm. They're okay with this high ground, at least for the time being. And at least here, it's a good info gathering spot. They can see where people are fighting off in the distance, know where maybe safe to rotate versus not to do so. Eventually, they will have to get down from their high perch, but for now, they're perfectly fine hanging out on top, just knowing that all the enemies are below them.
Got a live one out there.
I want to make note of the team that we did see eliminate NPC, pick up some remaining pieces of Trojan as well. Atlas. Atlas on the west side of the map right now will be coming up behind Calm. Won't have a whole lot of teams on their way, but they qualified out of the second group coming into today, the semifinals, with 105 points over 6 games. This team dominated. Atlas may very well be able to do the same thing here, and they have been silent, but very much deadly during the course of round 1. Red Dragon, one of our few crypto teams, perhaps set up. We'll have to move. Does not look good for them. Although they do have Bang, and they do have Caustic, they might be able to smoke out the height and survive for a little while.
The crypto is the force them to play a slower game, more of a style, which doesn't always work out when your team wants to play very fast. So Red Dragon, they're gonna have to get a move on themselves. The zone's starting to close in, going towards the ever-dreaded Ceto, where many of our teams have been holding up until this very moment, predicting that zone correctly. They're still gonna manage to move on through, but Ghost find themselves in a bit of a pickle, sandwiched between the window cleaners themselves. Ghost have had a great run so far, with how quickly their health is declining. It's not looking too good for them whatsoever. The smoke is in their eyes. They can't see where the bullets are going, and it'll be the end for our Lucid squad.
Like the good night sleep ult over the top just to make sure that window cleaners don't get pushed. Volti's gonna have a chance to res, and after taking refuge, we're seeing Bangalore's with a lot of sustain in this game. This has not been an uncommon choice during the course of the Challenger circuit, and it looks like the buffed HP regen is really working out in their favor. Many teams stacked up in Central Ceto right now. We did see Red Dragon make their move. All of these teams in the next 30 seconds will have to fight each other, or the teams in front of them, maybe both, as they will exit this building into chaos.
Are there any teams that are even not in Ceto right now, Dia? That is a genuine question you have to be thinking. These 10 seconds are going to be counting down to the doom of several squads. Red Dragon, they spot one hiding out pyramid in the distance over by the care package. They're gonna have to go in that general direction momentarily. The scans coming out on several teams. This is a nice spot, at least for Red Dragon. You can watch for people dropping above, but keeping an eye on who is at this very ground level, such as rolling teams. All of these toxic barrels that they've put up no longer are going to have that value. Ring closing in. Round 5, it's really gonna hurt.
And Shiny, I would give you the answer you're looking for. Who are the teams sitting outside of Ceto? Atlas are sitting outside of Ceto. They are the team, the Titan that has taken down so many. We'll be watching squads like rolling teams as they make their exit from this building. It's gonna happen. Let's see how they play things out as rolling teams tanks through the gas, tanks through the zone, emerges into...
Managed to get out, but they're finding themselves themselves face to face with Bazaar. That's one, that's two. Going on down, rolling teams were hurt in terms of only having blue shields up until that point, Dia. It came back to bite them at the end of the day. Teams like Atlas and Calm having the superior positioning in the long run is huge advantages for them to work with. But by Taishin, the last one standing, left the jump to get out, but isn't going to have time to use its Calm. So go ahead and fall once again. A good night's sleep, making their presence known within this lobby.
And Atlas, with that little push, do take quite a bit of space, but are still going to be relegated just to this area. They've got high ground, they've got smokes, but do Atlas dare and get aggressive onto the other team that has played this perfectly from the east side? Window cleaners are still alive and have control of the gravity cannon. Take a look at the upper left of your map and you'll see gravity cannon is the place to be. It's where the zone is ending, and up to ultimately Atlas to get aggressive or fall to make a massive mistake.
Oh, why would you do that, Atlas? This was their positioning. It was their fight to win, but it's all going over to Atlas at the hand of one sprint that is leading to disaster. All it takes is a couple more of shots to gun them down, and Atlas will claim the crown for game one.
And here we had so many good things to say. Man, that is tough for window cleaners, but a second place with plenty of kills. You know, I think you've got to look at that and go, you know what? It's okay. We did pretty well first game, but to lose control like that, whew, Atlas take game one in dominating form. It's a very well-deserved win.
It is. And Atlas taking out both NPC and then following up with the remnants of Trojan. I mean, Dia, those are the heaviest hitters you're going to find within this current lobby. And Atlas themselves showcased their game knowledge, their understanding of where that zone was going to go. The one team, as you said, that wasn't holed up within Cedo and was able to take this later position, catch off on other squads, and even when they were down, they had the opportunity to punish the mistake of an opponent. They were prepared for anything that was thrown their way and have put themselves high in the rankings in terms of game one.
You talked about teams that are cursed with second when we mentioned Red Dragon. Atlas, currently second seed, may very well be looking to take that title with a win today. They have been here quite a bit. They actually were the team that last week pulled out Revenant, if any of you remember that. So aggression might not even be their middle name. It may very well be their first. And I like that even without Rev, they're still playing with that same trademark style here.
I mean, Atlas, they've placed in the top 5 within both of the finals of the past Challenger Circuit weeks. It's not like that they're unfamiliar with a lot of these squads that are playing, and they've been able to use that towards their advantage. And Dia, especially towards the beginning middle portion of game number 1 here, we got to see the difference in playstyles, in positioning that a lot of these teams were starting to take, and notice the ones that typically ended up touring to the top were far from the center zone.
Yeah, it was fascinating to watch what squads chose to fight on the edge, got cold, and what teams, in a way, delayed that until the later game by playing center zone, getting a little bit aggressive here and there. Things like Lifeline, things like Watson, did really help when you were a team that wanted to early rotate, because it gives you sustain to be able to poke out at squads as well.
And particularly, we're going to see that more within the standings, which we now have ready from our first round today of those teams who did play on the outside, that did build up more of those resources. Atlas being one of them, 23 points for a game 1 finish. Not bad whatsoever. Window cleaners, though, Dia, they went kind of ham in terms of those kill points.
Very much did. I think you've got a lot to be proud of after game 1 hitting almost 20 points. Just one more squad wipe. Perhaps Atlas, and it would have been theirs. But that is neither here nor there. Really good game from Window Cleaners. Great control. And Ghost actually placing right underneath them is big, because Ghost was the squad that should have had to fight Window Cleaners, opted away from it. And I was pretty critical of that decision, thinking, hey, Window Cleaners are probably going to win the game. And as close as Window Cleaners got, the fact that Ghost are just one squad separated from that position makes this a really neck and neck race that Ghost must have navigated quite well.
Ghost, a team that sat invisibly behind some of these other competitors with greater accolades behind them, and now they're coming into the light themselves, no longer a ghosting form, a very real threat that we're going to keep an eye on as our Challenger Circuit Week 3 finals continue. But before we head into match number 2, we're going to go ahead and throw to a quick break, get all of our teams set up, loaded into the lobby, and we'll be back with more Apex action. And welcome back to our Challengers Circuit EMEA competition today. Dia, my goodness, we had an explosive end to our game number 1. Atlas coming out on top, but also some new squads starting to make their marks within the ALGS scene. We'd love to see these new stories start to be created, only to continue them in further chapters as game 2 is going to be starting shortly.
The first game is tough. I gotta be honest with you. I got really hyped towards the end of game 1. Then we went on break, and I opened a solar eclipse live stream. For those of you that don't know, the solar eclipse
That's
is
true.
happening pretty soon, and I feel so mellowed out right now. I think I'm in the perfect mental place to start up game 2 again. I do want to grab the standings if we've got the opportunity, just to take a look at where teams like you had mentioned, NPC and Trojan, ended up currently in 8th and 12th overall. This is just the first game, but it's an interesting starting point for two very powerful teams.
Especially, like, seeing NPC Red Dragon below top 5 is rather a rare thing. Historically, both prefer to take this aggressive route, be more of the predator than the prey, but at the end, it was Atlas who got the better of them in terms of positioning, the POIs they elected to go. We'll see if any changes are made to compositions. We did have some lifelines, some Watsons thrown in the mix, Dia, and, you know, we haven't seen too much of it so far. Maybe a crypto here and there as well.
You know, I was talking to there we go. We got the Watson again. We are foregoing Horizon this game, which is interesting. Not enough Watsons in the lobby that I don't think Horizon would get value, but perhaps a few too many Bangalore Bloodhounds.
To be expected.
Yeah. I not to say that I don't get it. I've also tried playing Horizon this season, and it has not been nearly as effective. Horizon largely unchanged, but
Yeah.
smoke is smoke.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that Mr. Incredible meme when I say that. You know the Mr. Incredible meme? Smoke.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what he says in the actual movie, but I know that he says blank is blank, and it's supposed to be the same thing. That's all I know.
I appreciate that lovely image, Dia, especially heading into this. Like every time we see a Bangalore smoke go down, that's what's going through my mind.
Yeah, I actually recently watched that movie. There is a lot of smoke in that movie. Lots of visual occlusion, opacity. I don't know which one I want to use. And you know what? Fortunately, I don't have to pick because we're already in the game. We've got Atlas loop paths to talk about.
Whoa.
What are we doing?
Where are Atlas? Question mark. I mean, okay, Dia, we can't really doubt them. They did show us last game that they can pull out a win, and this is a similar strategy to what they pulled before. Kind of.
Yeah, very much true. Atlas landing in Jurassic, pretty central spot on the map, have plenty of time to make use of this landing position. I was actually talking to, I think I was talking to 2R1C, one of the teams that are going to land, who also have done quite a bit of landing at Jurassic, and they were talking about how POIs like this, though a lot of people haven't really favored them, actually feel so much better after the update because of the rotational capacity they have, and you don't really feel the loot difference as much as you used to when Evo shields were a little bit more just based on what you picked up.
Yeah, it's the difference of kind of this RNG like, ooh, shiny shield, cool. You actually have to go around and you have to plan more carefully for that, which is Atlas's positioning. That's going to help them a bit more. The difference this time, though, Trojan especially is going to be more on the outskirts of the map compared to before. I believe they landed closer to checkpoint, if I'm not mistaken. So they've decided to go over to Mills for this second game here, looking for a better form of performance alongside teams like NPC as well. And you know, especially looking at this map where the zone is going quite similar to where we were last time.
Yeah, so much the same, and yet so many differences. Atlas have already picked out one, as this, at least second zone, does seem to pull a little bit harder towards Barometer. They're going to evac tower into that position towards the nut on the south end of Bridge, and we have got to keep our eyes on whether the team that won Game 1 has predicted a good spot to play early on in Game 2.
It was all towards Atlas's predictions that got them that win, and maybe a dash of death from an unnamed opponent. And regardless of that, Window Cleaner still had a great performance nonetheless, especially coming into this is one of those lesser experienced teams that this is their first time making that top 20, first time playing as this 3-stack of people. So having a second place to start yourselves off in the finals ain't too bad whatsoever.
No, and Meow actually likely feeling pretty good after the first game. They did have the POI that the zone pulled to, which limited their mobility in a lot of ways. But with now the second game on the horizon, they've already got a move on, have already made their way up to pick up a zone read by Cascade. And let's not forget, do have a Wraith Caustic. So in an end game, they can play at spots that are a little bit harder to make your way out of because you've got the Wraith to do it for you.
We unfortunately didn't get to see that last time with them eating an early end, and the Wraith didn't get that much value. It's one of those things where there's the power imbalance. They didn't have the proper Evo shielding to actually take a fair fight, and we're hoping for the sake of seeing some super fun Wraith play, because we're not going to see that anywhere else in our Challenger circuit today. But just entertainment, Meow. I hope you live to the end game.
Octane Genetics as well. Don't you just want crypto adrenaline flowing through your veins? Trojan on the ropes right now.
Okay.
You have just remixed up. This looks like a 1v1.
The 1v1 one that just diving back and forth between these shields. Trojan easily into better positioning. It doesn't take much for Remix Powers to actually shut them down, but neither of these squads want to be the first one out. And particularly Trojan, problem is you are likely going to lose out on Atlan here. Is taking some significant blows, getting Moxon back on their feet. That's really helpful. Getting dropped down. Remix Powers, though, loses out on the rush. They need help to get them back in. That's where Mosin's Resurrection will come in key, sending DN to their end.
Hit him with a little 07 here because the contest was good. That Thermite even juicier though. Horizon hitting that just as they run into zone. Will not meet the same fate as last time. Instead taking out Trojan. A nice bit of revenge for Call Me Dada.
Especially, I mean, Call Me Dada got jump scared almost by Trojan previously to take them out in 19th with a almost 0-point game, like 3 elimination points, right? Coming from that previous engagement. That's not a ton for a team you're expecting a lot more of, and Call Me Dada now get to take their place in attempts to reach this later game.
Will be one of the few teams that approach from the western side of the map as well, because that's largely been cleared out at this point. There is still a lot of time for teams to move in from the north, and I expect that to be one of the slower areas of the map, because anybody who landed over at Cedo, Devastated Coast, Echo HQ, is likely already in the barometer or surrounding area.
This is where more of that kind of early game positioning, that read coming in. I mean, surely you think, oh, this sounds not going to be the same as last time, but you know what? Here we are, and teams like Atlas are able to take more of an advantage with that, especially with this Hemlock in hand, the ability to kind of beam players out, especially with Zuni, the one holding on to it. That's going to be rather scary for any onlickers that happen to come in. You have to scan, though, from Tryhard Thor. It almost seems that if Atlas are debating whether they decide to take the fight or just let their opponents slip away.
I want to make sure that you don't get aggressed on at the very least, and Atlas are doing a good job of that. You'll notice that, I'm noticing right now, that they have pretty limited ammunition. Not more than 3 clips in any individual weapon that we've seen so far, and that'll have a big impact on their early and mid game, because it does require that they take and win a fight against another team. Something that while Atlas is practiced at doing, you can't guarantee ever in Apex Legends.
No, like that's the big problem of starting rather in the center of the map, in the center of zone, because then you have a lot less freedom to move about and actually get these resources. So even if they're still alive and well, Atlas don't necessarily have the capacity to take any of these battles that they normally would. The other teams don't really know that, though. I mean, they're able to kind of push up as needed. Octane Genetics, certainly wealthy when it comes to the ammunition department, and they're going to have the opportunity as a result, have more of these skirmishes at long range exchanging chip damage.
Just like hurling shots at Call Me Dada. Rotation in the red from Call Me Dada is really interesting. Looks like they're trying to get up to a high ground in Cedo, maybe rotate through the spider caves, and that'll be, well, a potentially good rotate into a spot that is likely already occupied. I guess we'll see how it plays out as Horizon does take point. Caustic, pretty thick, has fortification if necessary, and I believe they've just spotted out somebody ahead of them. So Horizon will have to play this safe and use the high ground in Cedo instead of the spider caves. Not what I think they were going for.
Oh, they're going to try to play this high ground, but it's a choke point. Really don't want to be sitting at. They're going to lose a lot of resources just attempting to move through this small corridor, and even that, look at that, it's an immediate turnaround. It's not even gonna bother taking that risk.
It's a good scan. Make sure that this is open, then move on into the caves. See what lies ahead of them as King Victor does take point. Another audio cue lets him know that they are just barely behind the squad. And I'm gonna tell you that squad is NPC, are the team rotating ahead of Call Me Dada.
This is rough. Call Me Dada, they don't know what they're about to walk into. The only thing that happened, and they can guarantee, is that there was a scan onto themselves. They have their backs up against the zone, quite literally. Unlikely for any squads to be coming behind them, but both of the routes they've attempted to take forwards are met with extreme barriers.
Red Dragon make their way in through the north. the Crypto team, you can actually play pretty aggressively if you're all on the same page. It requires a little more coordination than the Bangalore Bloodhound, but Red Dragon should be able to make good use of that. I'm surprised to see them backing off, but technically the zone doesn't force them to fight, and we are still pretty early on into this game. It is absolutely a valid strategy if you don't see a good fight ahead of you to simply prioritize survival, because if one more squad goes down, you're getting placement points anyway, and this might be it.
And Odyssey opened the gates to a rather devastating appearance. They don't really have too many other options to go forward from here. It seems like they're going to try to wave it out. Fortison's exchange on either end. They have the scan identifying where these players are, and they're opting to play this slower game. As you said, Dia, this can be advantageous for a lot of teams in a similar situation where they have to wait out for an opponent. You know that you have good Evo shields to push on through. It's only a matter of who's going to make that first move through the gates. Smokes them out one way or another.
Can't forget about Red Dragon either. Odyssey were fighting on one side, and oh, there they are. Red Dragon are right on the other. Horizon ult in front of them, already used. Mean Red Dragon can commit completely freely. They still got EMP to work with as well, and everybody's in the corner, giving Red Dragon the opportunity to pick up likely at least 3 KP, perhaps even more.
They already have the red Evo shield from all of this play. That was a perfect third party out of Red Dragon, going against both Yippee and Odyssey, claiming most of the KP that ended up going through Dia. Red Dragon certainly not happy with how their previous performance went and are looking to make it up with all of the eliminations they can get their hands on.
It works pretty well for them now. Hopefully it gives them an evac tower, as Taskmaster does appear to have one in inventory. Looks like a really easy way to access next zone. Do Red Dragon choose to use that, or do they take the harder pathway, looking for fights along the way and hoping that they win those as well? That would be the path to more points.
Yeah.
Points accentuated by the grenade. I wasn't planning on hitting points that hard, but then
That
a
was
frag hit you for 75 damage, and I'm like, all right, well.
yeah. But hey, we're back to not seeing anything. Those caustic gas, you have the fragment grenades on the ground. What really can you do if you're Emea? Well, you move forward and hope that there's nothing scary in front of you. The Dam, though, not having the same amount of luck. Juso and Marco having to fight without it, and Marco barely any health to survive, hoping that these caustic barrels can keep them alive, allow some of his health, and grab any KP. Now understand that they're in a desperate situation and are willing to try to back out, stay alive as long as they can. One of those instances, Dia, where we can finally see value that this race can have, the escapability, the mobility, perhaps giving them a second life.
Fingers crossed. It ain't what they were looking for, but oh no, the Reds on high ground. And this great climb from Jens is going to put a nail in the coffin of Meow. Calmer right behind this though, and the fight may continue as Jens picked up the last kill, and no one else is moving in to third party this. I expected Calm to be in a little bit more of a tough position, but instead, there are squads ratting them on the rotation.
Calm, living up to their name, completely relaxed in that situation. Not Genetics though, or more specifically, Gunther, the only one who still remains from this team, certainly has the adrenaline pumping, to say the very least. Looking to try to rat this one out. Was near that earlier fight we saw with Calm in particular, but you're nowhere near in a good spot to actually contest anything of this regard. The 2 KP that Octane Genetics have at a minimum is going to be a great start, not to mention you still made it to the top 13, gaining those previous points.
Gotta remember, we, with this next zone, have a lot of teams that need to move north as well. We're sitting here on this nade, see how it plays out. But teams like Atlas, NTC, Colony Data all need to move up through the entire bridge to make it into the next zone.
The distance they have to travel, and you can see Kunthar ducking and weaving throughout the rocks, trying to stay as safe as possible, but say this is a good spot. It's like, wait, spot somebody on the other side of the hill. There's no way that he tries to take another rat! Be a rat! But the beam is there. Still health to remain, though. Gunther is going to continue to go in, grabbing another KP, taking out Colin D in the most unlikely fashion.
so big. Picking up another placement point as well as the
Wow.
KP. This may be the end of their life, but in the rat v rat battle at 100 health disadvantage, Gunther makes it count. And Calm have the
Yes.
opportunity to pick up a kill. See if they do it. It's pretty tough through all of the shielding. They don't really get a straight shot. One more does it though. Nice shot from Tai Sheen. Octane Genetics are down. So are NPC as the south side of the ring claims more lives.
Oh, and you know who took him out? Dia? It was Atlas! Atlas once again found NPC throughout all of the chaos. Ghost is also going down along with Window Cleaners. Atlas are the only team within the top 3 from last game that are still alive.
Quite well, and continuing the aggression, OKS taking a lot of attention towards the north side of Zone as they fight against Red Dragon. Ozis takes a swing with the Havoc, finds a knock on Davidic, but instantly gets crossfired from the gravity cannon. It's up to Prestis now, who takes on the height once again, needing to clean up this squad, takes out OKS. Instantly the Wrap comes in, and you know it, you called it, Molly. It's Atlas that take out another squad, putting themselves in top 2 again, looking for a fight under the gravity cannon. It's Atlas that want their second win.
It's Atlas, they want it, and they're so close to having it against Taishin, Yaz, and Topra. It'll be difficult to try and pull out, but if anything is possible, it's going to be Atlas that can make it happen. Shots are going through. Calm have had an incredible game themselves. They actually tried hard to go down. Duty doesn't have any HP. Calm wraps around at the top of the rock. Had the God spot. Played it to their advantage despite all of the cards being in the hands of Atlas. Calm still had an ace up their sleeve and will close out to game 2.
Great use of the high ground, and really funny moment there where you realize that, oh, endgame Valkyrie still gets, especially in a spot like that, to access something that nobody else does. The insta move up on top of rocks really denied Atlas a place to play. Both squads getting really aggressive on their way in as well. I genuinely don't know who will have had more KP here.
No, this is a really difficult one to tell. Atlas were playing cleanup crew for pretty much all of game 2, and that's what they did throughout the entire day, actually. That's why they have so many KP. You're putting up 23-point games, and Dia, I'm not going to be shocked if they have close to another one. Calm did pretty well in their own regard, but to say we saw a lot more of this aggression, this more battle of the wits, as you could say, from Atlas.
They rolled in a really funny way as well, where after the one fight that they took on the edge of zone that they were vulnerable up against Meow, the only squads next to them were 2 separate Bangalore rats that were just waiting for a mistake. They didn't see that come through. Nobody on Calm dropped, so they get to keep it living. But man, that was a very funny way for the end game to play out for Calm.
You don't see that a whole lot, do you? The
No,
2 rats kind
no.
of beating each other. It's just kind of an unfortunate twist of fate, and like even catching like the tip of your toe, like you saw the toe sticking out from behind the rock, and that's when we saw that sneaky approach. It did get Octane another placement and KP point on the board, so all of those things very valuable. But when Calm can once again come in, wipe up the remaining scraps that you have left for him, it's pretty much all set and done from there. Regardless of the fact, 2 top 2 performances from Atlas in game number 1, and I can tell you these standings, I wouldn't be shocked if Atlas is still at least 1, potentially even a 2nd place here.
This is the dominant team so far, and
Yeah.
with 37 points, they are. I was wondering if they would average 20 points a game, but it is close. It is close. They've got time yet. You know, one pop-off game, they could get back there. Calm are playing second fiddle, but it is by a long way right now. Stormpoint has just been so Atlas favored, and I'm surprised to see it, given that they've changed compositions going into today.
Atlas, not what we're used to at all. I mean, this is the Revenant team. We watch them because Black Venom pulls out the unconventional pick. That makes it fun, right? We can see what's happening, and you have a little death ninja skeleton guy climbing up walls. I love to watch that kind of thing. But Atlas, no, they're going to confine to the normal constraints of meta and have made it their own, changing the way that they have played coming into today. And Dia, this is just the recipe for success that they've been building up to all Challengers circuit.
It seems like sometimes the meta can be your friend, and right now having Caustic for Black Venom is working. Red Dragon, however, with a third place right now, are encroaching on a similar position as last. They've been second every single Challenger Circuit so
Yep.
far. Right now, sitting in third, you want to break the curse in the positive
do.
direction. Not that it really affects their seeding. I mean, they are still,
Yeah.
they're still absolutely dominating right now. Let's
Yeah.
not get it twisted.
Oh yeah. Red Dragon absolutely frying in game number 2. But the story of Stormpoint has all been Atlas is the main character in the spotlight. One more round on this map before we move over to World's Edge. Before we get there, we're going to send it to a quick break. We'll be back with game 3 soon. Storm has been a brewing here in the Apex Legends Challengers circuit, and my goodness, Dia, Emea has delivered in terms of exciting moments thus far. Only one more map to go in terms of store point, as far as we can see today. Atlas have been reigning on top, have gotten this map down to a T. There's very few that have come back to be able to contest them till the very end of this series. As we prepare for our last one, Dia, what are we literally looking out for at the end of Stormpoint?
That's tough. You know what I'd like to see? It's just a wish list item.
Wish
but
list,
I
okay.
would love to see more teams surviving into the final ring, because both times we've got squads that are really good at cleaning up, and ultimately we end up with 2. And 3-team endgames get really exciting. They become a big mind game. I want to see that play out. I want to see how Challenger Circuit teams approach manipulating other squads.
Mm-hmm. We want to see these new strategies, this new approach. Challenger Circuit, you have so much room to try these new strategies. If you never know if it's going to work if you don't try it. And with this being closer to the Wild West than it is a incredibly organized, strict format of gameplay, this is the best chance to throw out those new things. Yeah, it might be a little weird, but if it can get you to this final circle, Dia, that's really all you could ask for.
Yeah, at this point, survival is the most important for any team, even if you don't win today's games, because I really do mean any team. Every single placement that you move up, whether you place in 19th, 18th, 17th, all of those are going to come with different challenge circuit points, and that's what ultimately matters to the majority of our teams here today. Yes, there are some squads who can pretty safely say, yeah, we'll see you in preseason qualifiers. That's not the case for most teams.
No, particularly with the sheer amount of teams that are in the top 20 for the very first time, or even have skipped out on one or two of the previous challengers circuits. That's going to come back to bite you. And in weeks 3, like we are now, and in 4, that's where we're going to need to make up for a lot of these lost points. Teams like Ghost making their first appearance here had a great strong start, have been placing in the top 5 in both of our games, but not having a significant withdrawal from the first half of the Challenger circuit is going to make qualifying ever the more difficult. And that's just one of the examples, Dia, of a team that really has to show up here as we move through to our final round of Storm Point.
Let's see how this one goes. Again, not expecting too much of a shift. I do want to cover this while we've got time. There is a technicality that we haven't talked about just yet, and what's looking increasingly unlikely. If NPC or Trojan were to win today, the second place team would instead get a win and auto-qualify to preseason qualifiers. The same thing would happen if it was NPC first, Trojan second, or the other way around. The third place team would qualify. Again, it is looking increasingly unlikely, but especially when we're preparing for things like CC4 and talking about that, the likelihood that you get 3 winners attending then seems pretty solid, and we will see that scenario. So keep that note for now, guys.
I'll have to keep an eye on that. And you mentioned NPC and Trojan, who we haven't talked about a lot today. And you know why? It's because they're not alive a lot today. And it's quite strange to see that from those squads who really dominated within the semifinals. You talked about how Atlas came in over 100 points within the semifinals over squads like Trojan. NPC had a very similar experience, and now for them to show up not even a day later, to be lacking, you're falling behind teams like Red Dragon, Winnow Cleaners, Ghost. You're coming into this, we've got to see that refresh go through. One more chance to prove yourselves on the map of Storm Point. See if they can make it happen.
And for teams, or rather fans that are watching this and did want to see a lot of Trojan or NPC success, perhaps you're fans from week past, let me hand you a little bit of copium. Getting to come back and play again is a wonderful privilege, and it's one that comes with the idea that you actually can have a day that's not great. You can experiment, you can adapt to the new meta at a slower rate than other teams, and try styles that, while they may not work in this lobby, may actually be moving you towards a successful route in the preseason qualifier. There's plenty of ways that you can not do great here today and still dominate when it comes to the Pro League qual that'll be happening later. So, they could just be experimenting. They could be taking their time with the new... There's so many... I'm just, a little bit of copium. For those who need it, I got you.
And what you said, though, Dia, is entirely true. If your teams that have already qualified for this Pro League, at the bare minimum, you treat this as your top-level scrims, your best practice that you're gonna have. Show me those new strategies. We don't like it all black and white. Give me some color in here. The creativity, that's what we want to see. That's what all the fans want to see coming into today. And of course, their favorite teams go on to succeed. Meow has been one of those, despite their incredible name. Love that, fellow cat fan over here. And have been rather silent. We haven't really heard the meows of victory so far. I'd want to see them move forwards, but I think the big thing here too, Dia, they're no longer on this Wraith.
After 2 games, deciding to abandon their small off-meta shift and instead move onto the Bloodhound, Bangalore, Caustic. It's tried and true, especially this season, and now that they're on blues going up against a squad on whites as well, they may actually get to leverage its full oppressive power.
And this would be big for them. Free Sosa has been towards the bottom so far, and Meow sniffing them out. If they can somehow get an indication that they have white shields, there's absolutely zero reason why Meow does not go in and pounce on the free KP. Essentially, Free Sosa, though, seem to have figured that out to at least a smaller degree, are moving slower away, placing their toxic barrels, making any sense of push more challenging on the other hand. But if we get to take a look, Videk, good night's sleep, Volty, all hanging up in this tree house without a tree, the overhang, window cleaners. And I'm gonna try to make that greater appearance, play second in game number 1. The Beast of the Hunt already active here too, just kind of daring anyone to come on out before taking the gravity cannon to safety. They're out.
One of the little tale as old as time moments that we're getting. This contest, this rotation into Devastated Coast has been happening for a long time for windows cleaners, and well, it doesn't always result in an actual fight. These two teams often end up eyeing each other, looking for a way to capitalize on a few kills. Right now, window cleaners should be able to hunt down at least one more KP, leaving OKS as a solo, and indeed they do. Good night sleep is going to put you to exactly that. 100 with the Havoc makes this a trivial matter.
Good night's sleep if you've been keeping your eye on the kill feed at all, and he's in there like all the time. Anytime that window cleaners are taking a battle, his aim is so crispy. I love watching it more and more, and a big part of the reason why window cleaners have found the current success that they have, even hunting down this final player, Volty is gonna manage to grab it. Lianiki hitting the dust once again, solo running around to rat to the end.
Do you feel kind of bad about that? He tap strafed his heart out, but
he tried.
Tap strafing, not gonna save you here. Not in the Challenger Circuit finals. Everybody knows how to deal with, eventually, that small movement challenge. If it's me, I don't know how to do it. I can't. You tap strafe on me, I'm like, I don't want this fight anymore. It's too much.
No, it's like the biggest form of like, oh no, I can't do that. I don't really want to fight this. They're just already, they look better. Like, they're intimidating you out of the fight. Not in this case, we can all do it, but hey, in our ranked games.
You think it's kind of like what what cats do in the wild, where they get really big and they go.
Oh yeah, like when they pop up. Yeah.
That's the equivalent of tap strafing. I think. I don't know. I'm not a biologist, but if we had someone study Apex Legends, I think they might tell you that. Ghost are going to go down meanwhile. They're our first full squad to be eliminated. It's a pretty slow game so far. Despite the kills we've been seeing, the actual squads have not been falling nearly as quickly.
Yeah, not quite at all. Toprowski here has been looking with the rest of Calm onto Remix Powers, who, again, has been a little bit on the silent side compared to what we're traditionally used from seeing from this guy. Trojan had a rough start throughout today. Again, not a huge amount of pressure on them to actually perform throughout the day, but they've been getting rather unlucky with the early fights they've had to take, Dia.
It was fascinating to watch Calm abandon this fight as well. They're moving up towards checkpoint, and it's now a race to the high ground between Calm and Trojan. Calm do have a small advantage with the Valkyrie, but their actual path is a little bit longer. This fight may very well just continue, but in a different place. Meanwhile, Calmidata recovering outside of Barometer do have nice cover to work with. Looks like they want to rotate up towards the north, and without Bangalore smokes, of which they now only have one, it will be difficult to do up against NPC.
Yeah, but like, NPC's sitting right now. There's no sightlines that you're gonna manage to get onto NPC unless they decide to drop down for some strange reason. This seems like a losing battle the Calmidata are currently fighting. They finally get the smokes back up and running. Those affordances to throw in. NPC can continue firing blindly, hoping, hey, maybe I can hit a headshot. It happens every once in a while. Robin, though, taking a significant hit of damage, and just like that, Calmidata has managed to move closer to these bamboo trees. A little bit more cover, yet the gatekeepers and NPC aren't going anywhere fast.
Calling out what Flinzon is doing right now, so important to use head peeks when you have the opportunity. Sitting on the high ground and using just the little top of the bubble to make sure that only your head peeks out when you ultimately are firing at opponents is making the trades for NPC so incredibly favorable and moving them closer to purple, where Bloodhound can really benefit.
Yeah, and NPC, they've gotten enough value just out of this little hole that they've been doing, knowing that any teams who have been stationed up on this outer side of the map by Barometer are going to have to go this direction. I mean, Call Me Data, they are about to be in the middle of a pickle as DN are currently rotating in their very direction, and it just gives NPC more players to look at.
Our squad that has dominated today. Atlas sits center of Jurassic. Let's not forget they land here. Atlas have not got a lot of loot. This is not something that we're not used to. That's how do I say that? How would somebody say that? It's not something new. There we go. That's a good way of saying it. Not something new from Atlas, given that last game they were playing with a pretty low amount of loot as well, especially in the ammo department. This time they've got a lot of ammo. They just don't have a whole lot of anything else, so they're playing safe. We'll see what they do.
A lot of those teams slowly starting to rotate in. Atlas just happens to be at the middle of that sandwich, whereas Call Me Data seem to be avoiding combat at absolutely all costs in the zone, knowing NPC and DN are on the side. They're going to try to go all the way around towards where we're currently seeing rolling teams in Odyssey posted on up. They clearly are respecting what NPC have been able to put down, and there's just no realistic chance for them to move through that choke point.
This zone actually could be crazy. Tiny Shiny, we talked about how zones have been more unpredictable recently. If we're working with past zone exclusions, things that just, Ring can't pull to because it's too far away, it doesn't make sense for the player. If, in fact, this is one of those new zones that plays with the boundaries of what is excluded from it, we could be getting some serious high ground involved in endgame circles, pulling on towards rolling teams, Odyssey, Meow, where everyone's stacked up center pylon. If not, we could go north. It's fine. We could go over towards Cold Revenge, and everything plays out pretty normally. But if we go center pylon, things about to get crazy.
Especially with how Pylon is just stacked with all of these various levels of high ground to be taken, the sheer amount of teams existing in that general direction is going to be massive as that zone continues to unfold. And how do teams really start to push in? The majority of them are still hanging out in this northern part of the current zone. I mean, there's only, with the mountains, how they're working, like 2 spots you can try to get around, and I can tell you, you're likely not going the route that Call Me Data are currently attempting to break on through, but we get a better look of what this is this peaceful scenery, DM. It's not going to be that way for much longer.
No, it isn't, but we'll enjoy it while it lasts. A little bit of hope going down, of course, as everybody wants to move up to purples, reds, whatever it is. The extra HP, if you have ammo to spare, is always going to be super valuable in an end game scenario. I did notice that window cleaners are holding an interesting spot, looking out over at Launchpad, making sure that nobody rotates into Pylon from that direction. They and Red Dragon both have the opportunity to take this engagement. Looks like window cleaners have got the better position. Meanwhile, Calm fight through the north, and this one's going to be a little bit tougher. Because Tiny Shiny, lots of teams are coming from the north. Most teams, when in a southern zone, will come from the north. That's just, I don't even know if it's biology. It's science, mathematics, I don't know what it is.
Logic works.
Logic. If it's a south zone, that's what happens.
Yeah. There's only so many directions you can come from, and it's probably not the southern one. So, unless you're DN, you can kind of be the oddball in this situation, but if they somehow manage to break in with a killer flank, it would be amazing to watch. The other teams that are on that northern side, though, Calm being one of the furthest out of most of them, this is not going to be an easy task. Have the flight to be able to get yourselves some of this more information, and most importantly, move around these mountains. There's like 4 or 5 teams that are stationed up around the route Calm would have to take, but it doesn't matter if you can just sail right over their heads.
Surely this doesn't. Barely down.
They're gonna land on them?
They haven't even taken any damage. Calm actually
What?
just make it into the zone.
What?
Well, their spot isn't great. Well, it's not active. That is not punished at all.
Wow.
Instead, all the focus is on Atlas. We're sliding in from Jurassic. They've got no scan, but the smoke seemed to have done enough to get Atlas onto the low ground, and they're not being peeked at either. There's too many teams in this area. They're really hard commit to try and take down Atlas, and God knows you've got way more problems coming at you from Jurassic. So many squads are still stuck in there. Yippee was one, but now been taken down.
Yippee and Octane Genetics. This is a very rough spot. But you have to work your way on through. Goldfellas, or Goodfellas, can see absolutely nothing that's going ahead of them. Getting shot at from seemingly nowhere. The Spooky primary damage dealer for the end of Goodfellas. As Trojan is the longest, and they've managed to live with some significant Evo Shield bonus. Dia, as this ring begins to close, and they're gonna have to fight their way towards the pylon, having this additional health is gonna be massive.
You gotta hope that it's enough, because lots of teams will be looking up at them. The next zone, extremely punishing for those without an evac tower, without a Valkyrie, without a whole lot of luck to go with either of those things as well. There's plenty of squads stacked up looking at Jurassic. What's interesting is that a lot of these teams are also going to have to rotate themselves during the next ring. That is something Trojan can take advantage of, and it looks like they are. As a quick slide down the hill takes them right into the belly of the beast. NPC are down. 12 squads left. Calm still looking out at all of this, and they are going to be one of the few squads with the reposition, with Valkyrie ult available.
The Valkyrie could not come in more handy in a situation like this, and Calm used it to get themselves to the battle to begin with, and now it's likely going to be the very tool that takes them to a longer end game, where teams like Red Dragon are fighting out for their lives in a 3v2, or excuse me, 3v3 against Window Cleaners, but they get jumped up from behind. What an impressive play from Faulty, taking the high ground immediately away from them, and when Red Dragon just started to get comfortable, they're going to go down in the bottom half of teams.
A kind of an awkward spot it looks like for Red Dragon, but when you think about it critically, the way that they played last zone did mean that they would have to fight Window Cleaners. And now Window Cleaners chill. Nobody else can contest their spot. They're fine for now. It's Trojan who I'm worried about. Playing on the outside of zone, they are going to get aggressed on from by squads in the center, by squads behind them. Remix Powers takes surprisingly little damage, and even now as squads fall behind them, I am very surprised to see Trojan so unshakably alive.
And Atlas is down too. Atlas was pushing them from the back. They never got that fast rotate off, and Trojan 1000% punished them, leading them into the pit of death. These teams that have been holed up in the building for so long, Trojan finally has a reason to fight the battle. You throw the thermites in, that's called the down, followed by :D. Trojan made their move at just the right moment. Their level of understanding of how this game should be played is working out in dividends. They've mowed through 2 squads and have their sights set on another.
Oh, and Tiny Shiny, we are getting so close. Look at this end zone. Window Cleaners. They're looking at this going, man, we thought we predicted this right, but zones don't work like they used to, and we are going to the center of Pylon. Meow have got a spot. Odyssey, Rolling Teams have got a spot, and as you said, Trojan have just earned themselves one.
Window Cleaners. Oh, that's so unfortunate. They had the big brain strat, but they're gonna walk straight into Trojans, and even if Meow dared to peek their head on through, Trojans already spotted the rotation out from the other end of the building. They're not really gonna push on up, understanding the advantage they currently hold, and which is completely understandable. The cost of blood, and you want to make the most of it as these fights start to move into closer quarters.
Trojan is absolutely reclaiming lost momentum. We haven't seen them be big in the first 2 games of Storm Point, but now with the power position, plenty of kills, they are looking unstoppable. Window Cleaners, however, very stoppable as 2 fall immediately. Good Night Sleep still alive. The solo Caustic cannot do much, at least not in my solo queue history. Good Night Sleep. Doesn't have angles from the high ground as well. Instead, will just go down without ceremony. 5 squads left. Meow still alive. Hammer points RE45. That's what's up. And we wait for the next engagement that actually could be a while. There's no real reason for any of these teams to fight until the zone forces them to.
No, it's literally all going to be a matter of them pushed out into the open, where we're going to see Lox and Chico right now. It's absolutely wonderful. Look at these shots that are chipped in, too. Holding on to the Mastiff of all guns. Rather rough to play the shotguns, but Dia, if these fights do end up going inside where a lot of these teams initially predicted, which doesn't look like it's going to, it could have turned out to be much better. There's no reason for Chaos to engage just yet. It's only a matter of time till the trigger is pulled.
You remember how in game 1, a small mistake cost a team, perhaps not the game, but a better shot at the end game?
Yeah.
Well, interestingly, that same thing could be happening here. Odyssey have not managed their ammo very well. They haven't gotten the chance to get a little bit of loot, and Pinhu drops down onto the low ground. This is what I was worried about, to get a little bit more ammo. It looks like this worked out, but if Trojan had been expecting it, it was an opportunity to punish a team that was in a really bad way resource-wise.
Oh, in a lot of these endgame fights, you have to manage the resources that you've had. If you've expended most of them up to this point, third party is going to be one of your best chances at coming on out, especially when you don't have all of the information where teams are located. You do not want to move into the open. That's why rolling teams are opting to just shoot the bow through the small doors. You can look at each other playing this game of like chicken through the windows, but there's not much realistic value that's going to end up coming through it in the long game.
Everybody looking at Meow going, yeah, you are probably the next team to die.
Oh,
this
that's
just is
unfortunate.
a natural consequence of the zone. Not much that Meow can do except for wait for another fight to break out. Could happen, but taking a look at the way that other teams are playing, nobody seems interested in doing anything but harassing Meow. Bank Smoke will help them out for a little while. Caustic Gas and a frag on the other side. They are just trying to delay. Will it be long enough? No! A frag grenade lands on them! Meow go down without even a bullet shot at them! And now we are down to just 4 squads.
Now found themselves in the water. All the teams had their target set on their back, but now the focus has shifted over to Taishin. Calm has had yet again an incredible run throughout game number 3 on Starpoint. The lane's gonna go thrower. The space is coming on in, but Calm with their position, they're in a very rough spot. They have the Valkyrie ultimate. It's gonna get them absolutely nowhere there. The explosion of the Bangalore ultimate stunning them up. They can't see, they can't shoot. Calm, a game where they felt confident. They're going down. It's down to just 2 squads. Trojan, their time to shine, their time to make the comeback is finally here, and it'll be the Gladiators winning it out in the final round of Stormpoint.
Killer instinct from Trojan in the last zone. Great identification that other teams are getting busy. Nobody's looking at us. Let's take the spot that Meow just vacated. It may not look good, but that's the power in it, Shiny, is that nobody is looking at Trojan as they take... That is an awesome Bloodhound skin. That is such an awesome Bloodhound skin. Sorry. As they take one of the best positions in that end game. As so frequently is true, it's just the spot that nobody else is looking at.
You legitimately could not have gotten any better than what we just saw from Trojan right now. And surely that has to propel them up in the standings from what we've seen so far with how early we saw NPC, we saw Calm, even Atlas themselves go down. That is Trojan now in a 3rd place and reasonably within distance of the top 2.
Good spot for them so far. As long as you can stay in top 5, I think this is an absolute win for you. We talked about coming back, experimenting. If you land in top 5 again, you're able to do that and perform really consistently. It looks like Trojan are on the pathway, but a lot of things are about to change, Shiny, as we've still got World's Edge on the horizon, and that is a completely different game than Stormpoint.
You have to change up your strategies, your positioning, the teams that you're going to be fighting. I mean, everything is going to be brand new, and especially in a halftime scenario, Dia, it's a great time to reset as a team. Perhaps if you had a rough start here on Storm Point, let World's Edge be that revitalizer that can bring you back into contention of some of these top spots, looking at these circuit points, and even potentially guaranteeing your place within that Pro League qualifier. Moving ahead and Dia, we've seen the come up of some of these teams, more consistent performances, but the top three are slowly starting to make their distance, moving away from those who stand below them.
Window Cleaners still got an argument. Red Dragon working on theirs as well. Sure would be nice to see Red Dragon in second again.
Would love it.
Just as long as they can keep it up, but that's all to be determined in the second half.
Yeah, we have so much more to look forward to within World's Edge. The change of the game, the change of the points, and before we get there, we're gonna throw it off. Let these teams reevaluate what went down in the first half of our game. Prepare for maps 4, 5, and 6. So much more action yet to come. We've officially hit the halfway point of our Challengers circuit. Emea has continued to deliver throughout the end of Storm Point, but Dia, this is where things start to get spicy. More of our teams, they've made their statements on the leaderboard. Our top three have made their way to the top. But new map, new game, new play styles is what we have to see here for the remaining half of our series.
And when we were moving into Storm Point, we talked about what teams might be fighting each other there. I want to do the same thing here. Per the declarations by teams, we've got Cold Revenge and Meow fighting at Overlook. And I think we had one more at Staging with Odyssey and OKS taking each other on. These are just declarations before the game. There is a chance they do not happen, as we saw last game, with teams prioritizing instead avoiding 0-point games rather than their own POI.
And what we've seen as a pattern throughout the day today too, Dia, is what we're used to in Challenger Circuit. With this is the Wild West, where we're running and grunting, we're getting aggressive. We don't care what the consequences are. There's so much passive energy. Like we're kind of become a pacifist, especially in this early half of the game. And once it gets down to about rings 4 and 5, that's when we'll start to see there was no other choice but for you to fight. There's no team that wants to take an early game contest, and a lot of that has to do with the way that the game overall itself has changed with the terms of Evo and looting. But it's a rather interesting pattern that we've continued to observe given past occurrences of the Challenger Circuit.
Yeah, one of the things, it is likely the Evo system that's affecting a lot of that, because when you drop, it's 50-50. It's completely RNG. And it used to be that when you drop anywhere, it was kind of RNG anyway. And so, like, if I'm going to go to Lagoon instead of North Pad, I'm just probably getting worse loot. I have less of a chance of actually playing the game. But now if I go Lagoon instead of North Pad, yes, I may have less opportunity to pick up like great attachments, but I can still do PvE, I can still prioritize harvesters, I can still get to a similar power level, even if I'm not landing at a real POI. I think it's why we're seeing a lot of teams forego the opportunity to fight early, because why 50-50 something when you can take a slightly worse position and then work the odds in your favor?
Exactly, and particularly as we move into the later games with the leaderboard more firm, teams now have a clear idea of what they need to accomplish in order to get the results that they desire here. Like, if you're Calm, Trojan, and Atlas, you're pretty set where you're at, but if you're wanting to make it to the top, particularly for Calm or Atlas, guaranteeing that spot, perhaps you're starting off a little bit slower in some of these games. Both Calm and Atlas, in the first half of the game, opted to play on these edge points, rotating around, catching anybody that they could off guard. Those were the two exceptions to more of this hunting that we typically see going on with the top dogs. Everybody else, though, was far and away from one another, opting to hold their resources and fights towards the latter part of a lot of our action today. As we get to move in, do we see any changes? The one big thing I'm seeing, we do have a Watson coming back to fight us again.
Can I just say, in the breaks, Tiny Shiny, I have been watching the Eclipse. I was pretty vocal about this after game one, right? It's looking good. The Eclipse has almost happened. Again, not a scientist, but it looks cool. I just want to say, if you are out there and you're watching Apex right now and you're simultaneously running the live stream for the Eclipse, stop cutting to black. We don't cut to a victory screen in the middle of the game or during breaks. Don't cut to black when that's the climax of the thing. And that's all. If you're out there and you're getting distracted by Challenger Circuit, get back to work and stop cutting to black. Put an Apex victory screen on there. I don't care. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's been a small rant from Dia in between character select and moving on to the map. Hopefully it's given our teams enough of a chance to decide, ooh, I can feel the spice within me. I've let it out a little bit. All right, now we're getting into the game. It's time for that staging contest.
Oh no, Dia's been unleashed. What can we do? What can we do now? Oh no.
No one can help us.
Form.
Fortunately, Odyssey do have some nice high ground to work with, so that's going to temper me a little bit, right? You can't start fights off immediately. Instead, they're going to have to take this one a little bit slow. Typically, high ground does have an advantage, but you still got to run a long way to actually get somebody.
Yeah, mobility, not going to be it. Sightlines, oh, plentiful. If you tried to go anywhere, I wish you luck, because you're sure as heck going to need it. For the sakes of Odyssey and OKS, those were one of the two contests that were aforementioned, so they were prepared for each other if they decided to check on the agreement that had been settled previously, but we're still going to find ourselves in a similar pattern where they don't exactly want to take this 50-50 battle, right? There's no rhyme or reason to be able to do so, particularly if you are on white shields, and for the sake of Odyssey, there's nowhere for them to get any resources.
That is one of the other things, however, that Odyssey, who on the high ground on the high ground have in their favor. OKS can't really move out to get anything better than Blues until Odyssey do. In this particular case, no Evo Harvesters nearby, both teams will disengage, but there are situations where if you land on high ground, you have a better chance of winning because you've got easier access to Evo Harvesters that spawn nearby, and then can get to Blues and abuse that advantage faster. In this case, again, that's going to be null. Keep it in mind for future staging contests. Meanwhile, OKS get their singular craft and move on out of there because the game is being played in the meanwhile, and already teams are likely starting to prioritize good positions for the mid and end game.
Oh my gosh, Dia. It's actually a north zone, which would be great for a lot of our teams, except for you are cold revenge with 2 of your players currently knocked. Bit of a yikes, particularly with NPC on the damage dealing portion of that. Another one of the contests where NPC opted to go towards Big Mod, saw cold revenge on Stacks and said, all right, guys, we're currently sitting down in 14th place. This isn't cool. We're going back to this more aggressive style.
It's a good way for them to start things out, and honestly, a big benefit of where they land over by Stacks and Mod. You can get very aggressive with the additional weaponry and nice loot that comes with the POI. Over in Fragment, however, the loot may not be as nice, but the fights, they really do come to you quite quickly. Window cleaners still on whites, haven't even gotten the chance to move out of the POI, and already they are dealing with an engagement.
It's Meow back on the Wraith this time, pulling it out. Said, all right, yeah, I can't work with what we've been going before. Might as well go back to the comfort pick, the smoke, giving them some cover, but not on the right side. These aggressive shots out of the Mastiff make playing close a devastating damage blow. I mean, Meow is still going in, chunking through the shielding, both of which have purple, meaning Meow, they don't know what the resource game is really looking like on the side of their opponents, opting to use the Beast of the Hunt, other ultimates, the scans, thinking that they have their opponents with their backs corralled in.
Damn, has the scan up soon. The push is slow, albeit a bit inevitable. Only 1 clip left in the RE45. Means that the Nemesis will be the choice for now. I am really confused as to how Meow got to this point. Do so with purple shields, I will remind everyone. Takes another swing, does a lot of damage. It should be enough for Meow to clean up. Surely, once you've done that much, the rest of the team is able to capitalize. But I'm not seeing the follow-up. Marco has to reset at the same time, and maybe Juso gets back into the fight. Maybe this is the end of Meow.
Meow, we're playing so split throughout this time, regardless, whatever heroics Juso was trying to pull, you're fighting this one-on-one with the barrels essentially between each other's eyeballs. Not really sure what you're expecting to happen. You can kick open the door. Marco, well, has to make your mark one time or another. Managed to get one down, but not the other. God damn, and to spread out. Meow had such an early advantage when it came to the health, when it came to this battle, but here they are suffering, and they shall fall at the hands of window cleaners.
That was so incredibly close, but man, the push from Goodnight Sleep is absolutely the right call, and I've seen so many players get frozen in that moment. When facing down a gold knockdown shield and you've only got white, seeing the white get chewed through, a lot of teams, a lot of players will stick there and go, well, I don't know what to do now. Great call from Goodnight Sleep to say, this may look like the wrong play, but I am full committing into their gold knockdown because I cannot survive behind the white.
Yeah.
Again, you see a lot of teams freeze when things like that happen. When you're in your Kobayashi and Maru, when there's no real great play. But it worked out because window cleaners had the gumption to go for it.
That's the thing about Goodnight Sleep, too. That's not the first time that we've seen that player in particular make these incredibly intelligent decisions. Yeah, they have the aim, but also not letting yourself get lost within the sauce and keeping your head on straight is a huge factor of how teams are able to pull away. And the advantage of some of these battles, it comes down to the decision-making, how you're going to fight. But at the end, they got to choose whether to look to the front or to their backs. Bloodhound scan isn't going to get all of them marked on up, and the end having the Watson, not a real escape route here either, Dia.
What an odd spot to choose to hold in the mid game. I'm not explicitly critical of it right now, but it's definitely an abnormal decision to
choice.
hold up on this high ground. It doesn't provide a lot of safety. You're choosing not to go into Skyhook. Maybe you couldn't get there on time, whatever it is. But it does end up with you in situations like this, where there's a lot of sight lines from different teams on you. And DN are doing well to survive right now. Thank God they've got the Watson to do it, or they would just be hemorrhaging shields.
This is the one time where the Watson does come in very, very handy. I mean, not for Atlas, though. What is this? Are they only a Storm Point team? There's no way that they've been in the top and go out in 7D. Dia, if anybody expected this today, I would say you're absolutely crazy.
Ghost finally getting their comeuppance
Wow.
from the first game. They did so well, and now on World's Edge, they got to show us that calculation that worked out. So, that doesn't work. That worked out to the tune of a lot of points for them in the very first game. That sounds a lot better. Thank you. Thank you very much for bearing with me through that. Red Dragon, however, holding up by bridge. This is typically the bridge of death. In this particular case, I think I'll forego it, since it doesn't appear to be in a favorable place in zone. It still, however, doesn't look that good for Red Dragon to be split as much as they are, and to be chased down by NPC. They are just in completely different areas. Red Dragon gave Ozus up for dead a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, Ozus, I do wonder how he got out by himself in the first place, to be totally honest with you. You're essentially, is it like just baiting NPC away, allowing the better of the team to just escape and move out? And regardless of the fact, Red Dragon, they really needed to come up here to get closer to that spot, had been stuck in that second place curse, and if they keep playing like that, well, you may not get a second place, but it might not be first either, Dia.
Fortunately, Ozus is back. Crypto and the magic of Crypto has kept them alive. Very nice stuff. Red Dragon will get their third. We'll see whether their third survives the landing, because you've still got to actually move up towards Red Dragon in the center. However, it's theoretically possible. And Ozus, fingers crossed, 50 HP, walking right into, or rather right next to Trojan. Does risk their life, but it looks like they're alive for now. I'm just trying not to curse it. What else do I talk about? What else do I talk about? Trojan, great. Good spot. They are sitting on high ground outside of Epicenter. From here, you can abuse teams that come from both the south and the western side of the ring.
And that's where a lot of our teams are currently stationed up. There's a big group are currently playing just south of where Trojan are, and where Cold Revenge actually, they're not willing to be partaking in. Already 2 players down, and yeah, that's going to be a swift death on their side. And none other than Ghost, who's been going through. We've been seeing them a lot more on World's Edge than we had in any of our games in Store Point, Dia.
They just keep doing it to squads, I guess. Like, they roll up on Trojan and go, you don't get to play the game anymore. They roll up on Cold Revenge. They don't get to play the game anymore. These are extremely quick fights that we're seeing from Ghost. And they are taking them in probably the most decisive manner that we've seen them take fights all day, where on Stormpoint, they seemed, I'll say, even fight averse, avoiding them a lot of the time.
And even now, it's like they've gotten this confidence
zone.
boost. Like, what is this zone? How did they get so lucky with this? Oh, Dia, Ghost, like this is the prime spot for them to just close out game number 4 altogether.
This is so funny. Ghost have been playing really well, and part of me wants to go, wow, they predicted that. That's really cool, because I like it when teams predict things, and I do genuinely think it's cool. And the other part of me goes, there's no way you predicted this. There's no way anybody could have gotten this, because nobody else is even in Skyhook. That could be because Ghost killed them. That's you know, there's something there. But I'm inclined to say that it's because it wasn't a very popular choice.
Yeah, there's just not very many teams that want to play in Skyhook, and if anybody did, well, you will face the wrath of Ghost. Yippee, though. They're gonna be bunkering down under this building. Not an ideal spot by any means whatsoever. The only beneficial part is this is our good friends, the Watson team, that have been playing indoors. So it's unlikely for them to want to leave their own cover in order to fight where Yippee is playing. It's likely going to be their hands being forced as a matter of the zone closing in.
We talked about Yippee having a very seasoned IGL from previous seasons. It's been a little bit of a slow day for them, but on the World's Edge, that's where you really expect to cash in on experience from an in-game leader's perspective. Yippee have got the chance to do it, as they're one of many squads that will be rotating in from the south. Same rules before. Remember logic. It's the whole team. There are going to be a lot of teams from the south because Northern Zone, Yippee gets to take advantage of that.
Yippee do, call me daddy, they are at the losing end of that exchange. Only beneficial, you got some lovely shield health and no more window cleaners on your backs searching for their pavement. Horizon though needs to get a move on. This zone is gonna hurt in the long run. In fact, they're actually gonna likely end up losing out on both him and their Bloodhound player, call me daddy. They had such a great run to move on through. Now, they're the ones struggling. Bongo, the last one alive for the squad, just has to cut their losses at the best, hoping for a rat later in this game.
A lot of teams have been caught making similar mistakes to what we just saw Call Me Dada do. Taking their time on rotates when you know the zone is pulling up north. This is ultimately, well, it looks inevitable, but that's a Gibby and a Wraith, and we've got to talk about Free Sosa.
You know what? We wanted creativity, Dia. We got it. We got it. You don't see that much these days. And Free Sosa have been in about 19th to 18th place throughout the day. This is by far the highest placement they've gotten thus far. The world is strange, nonetheless, but the fact that it's working out the way it has been wonderful. Another one squad's been stepping up. NPC taking the fight on the high ground. The caustic gas making it difficult to continue pushing through. The gold knockdowns are certainly going to help their case in the long run should they get rushed, and even gets them a free res on the Flyzon.
That was a situation where, Flyzon did so much damage that I went, well, if they don't win this, they're throwing. Like, at that point, you take your down as a break, and indeed they did. See a small Gibby bubble off in distance as Free Sosa have repositioned to underneath the bridge. Yippee, clean up, Call Me Dada, one of the few squads left towards the south end of zone, but will still have to move themselves as the next round is already closing in. Nobody from Grandma's house has planned their rotation. That includes Yippee, and I think everyone is going to be caught up in a mass culling from the south.
There's only one team that's really in the north right now. Everybody else is corralled towards where we're seeing Yippee currently play from. They've waited so long under this building, kind of the trolls under the bridge, but haven't been able to make anything of it. Now the stone has caught up to them. It's only Estesu remaining, sub 50 HP combined, and she's gonna let the zone do her in. Squads falling left, right, and center until only 4 remain. DN, Free Sosa, Ghost, and OKS.
DN playing under the sights of Free Sosa. With smokes have survived quite a bit. Got a chance to reset, and Free Sosa do not have shields to work with. Instead, they're fired on from above. They don't get to take their time. Instead, it gets turned. Free Sosa now with a Gibby against the world. A Gibby with a shotgun, but a Gibby nonetheless.
It's a rough day to be a Gibraltar out in this economy. Free Sosa, it looks so good. They've been creative, but a care package, not great cover. The smoke in the eyes of DN is gonna help them move forward. They're taking this incredibly aggressive angle as they should be doing so. The shield is done and gone. The rest of the squads rather spread out, and Ghost will be taking their time working into that final zone.
Winkler already gonna be going down. DN now with a Graber have the chance to change fates. This is not a good spot in zone. DN and Ghost both are going to have to move up to where OKS hold at the sniper tower, but a Graber has changed so many games in the past. A little bit of damage, and that's all it takes to find the knock immediately afterwards. Let's see what Winkler can do.
Winkler has a big task up on their shoulders right now. The difference maker to buy their team back in to the fight, ascending onto the high ground.
Wow.
With the shield generator down. What an aggressive angle from DN. They're gonna manage to set up the grab, the knock too. Oh, we wanted Winkler to deliver. Might not have been with the Kraber just yet. The positioning, the decision making though, has been on par. The rating down, there's no cover that they can take. They have teams firing from multiple angles. Dia, they may have very well tracked themselves up on this high spot, hoping that their opponents would look elsewhere.
They just put the DN on OKS. That was so fantastic to move up, take the ego evac, and have one of the best spots in game. It's far from winning DN the game, but a pick on Calamitous does open things up well for them. Still the chance for Ghost to recover, and they may do so. OKS bide their time. Everyone will have to give up their cover, and interestingly enough, Ghost may have the most cover when it comes time for the true endgame.
It's going to be a tough endgame. It's going to force everybody out of their current hiding spots. Almost no cover where the zone is actually going to end. And DN, they might have the highest ground right now. It's not going to be theirs for much longer. Been playing so well around the Kraber, around Winkler. An excellent play to get them to this position, yet two out of the 3 teams here, Dia, even in our top 4, 3 of our top 4 have been in the bottom 5 of our rankings in overall throughout today's series. The fact that they've made it as far as they have is going to be massive in terms of these later points.
World's Edge really does change everything. OKS got a lot of time left, and interestingly, it's DN who are now likely the most focused team in the lobby. They've got high ground, yes, but it hasn't net them too much just yet. They're gonna have to play with a few fence lines and not much else. The smoke's likely available for them, and I'm not seeing a pylon when they drop down. The nades at this point in the game are going to be unlikely.
Not at all. I mean, there's little resources. TSM can only get so much more value out of that Kraber. 6 bullets total left in the chamber. To mention, the shots can be devastating if they can land, but there's zero reason for teams to move out to cover if they do not have to. We'll see the stand from Ghost going on in, clarifying that everyone from DN is up on the top, but this is exactly what DN wanted. They wanted Ghost to look at the other team instead of them. This is their chance. They can start to move through. Huge chunk of damage through the Kraber shot, forcing shield battery to come out. The rest of their opponents starting to move their way out from their cover. This is where everything starts to get done. With another shot, surely this is where DN, they could drop down. This is their game to go ahead and win. But they're still biding their time. They're not going to take what they perceive to be a risk. But all this is more of an opportunity for their opponents to come up big. TSM
oh my god!
Full shot and just to spray down and a couple more to push on through. That's OKS eliminated. Only one more team. Ghost stands in the way of DN, making a performance of lifetime of Winkler. Performance of a lifetime. Absolutely popping off, shredding on through. And that will be no! They go down to the zone. It's Ghost that are instead going to take it. The heroics of Winkler will go unspoken as Ghost pulled from behind.
Ghost may have won the game, but Winkler saw the face of God. That was incredible play with the Kraber in the end game. DN played with, I think, appropriate aggression, lacking a little bit of it in the first couple of squads, mostly because they were trying to win the game. And from a spot like that, we called it out when we saw it, but Ghost likely had the best position with the cover that was available to them moving into the end game. They make that work for them. They take a well-deserved victory, and it's been a while since we saw them in the top couple teams in the leaderboard, but the last time we saw it, it was with calculated play. This time, I can't say that it was much different.
No, I mean, Ghost were prepared for any realistic scenario. They had the best positioning, they had the best reads, and some of that key decision making really shone through, especially when you got somebody like Winkler having the game of their life in the end there. It was an absolute treat to go ahead and watch, and I can guarantee you this is going to shake up standings. There is no doubt in my mind. World's Edge has completely flipped the series on its head. I want to see where these teams have ended up. DN and OKS have climbed their way to 14th and 12th respectively, where for the first time Ghost make their appearance in the top 3 with a 3-way tie.
That is so crazy. That means 2 games left to determine
Wow.
who's coming out on top of this. Calm, Atlas, and Ghost, all of them have yet to actually win. But take a look at the team just below. Trojan is creeping up here as well, and there's only 4 points separating them from the top of the leaderboard. That 3-way tie you talked about. There's a chance Trojan come in for the upset and cement their names in Challenger Circuit history once more.
So much room. There's no telling who's going to come out on top. Only 2 more games to go to decide the fate of these teams. A 3-way tie for first. Absolutely unheard of. I can't wait to see where these slots will fall when the dust settles. Game number 4 is going to be coming up shortly, and I can guarantee you're not going to want to miss it. What a series that we have had. Dia, we just had our first round in World's Edge, and the game has been completely flipped on its head. We had some of our bottom 20 or bottom 5 teams making it up to the top 5, and other way around. This is completely unconventional but normal for our Challenger Circuit, and why it's so engaging. It's so fun to watch, but I can guarantee you these teams aren't having as much fun as we are here on the desk. This is where things really start to get down to what matters the most. Only 2 more games left to decide your fate in the future of the Challenger Circuit.
And whether fortunately or unfortunately, we're not swapping maps again. That only happens once. And that means that for those teams that maybe struggled a bit on World's Edge, they're not going to get relief from that and start moving back to Stormpoint and do whatever it was that was working for them well there. Instead, World's Edge is where you're going to be at. It's where you're finishing the series. And that means that play that does prioritize buildings and cover a little bit more it tends to be safer. Stormpoint, you can get away with controlling a lot of open space. You can get away with a high ground that doesn't really convert into too much else. Here on World's Edge, that same thing is not true.
Completely new play style and things that teams have to learn how to adapt to. And we can see some that were changing more than others. Particularly, we saw it from DN towards the tail end. OKS made their way towards a top 3 finished. Even Ghost, a comeback who has been rather silent in comparison to the very start of our day, where as our heavy hitters, our Calm, our Atlas go down within the bottom half of the teams today, leaving us with a 3-way tie for Thirst at 39 points, Dia.
If we get the chance, like, we just got to re-emphasize that as much as possible.
We do.
Everybody in the top 3 is at 39 points with only 2 games to go. It's mathematically just not very likely that happens in the first place, but even further than that, it's going to put a lot more pressure on these squads who know that they've got what it takes to hold a top spot, and yet are neck and neck with so many other teams around the map, around this finals. Challenger Circuit, as the days go on, is only getting more and more exciting. Wow. And now it's time to see whether they can hold on to that tie. I gotta say, mathematically, they are breaking it this game, but maybe they stay close. Maybe there's a 2-way tie. That's my ideal.
Maybe. I mean, that would be still pretty insane. If we somehow get another tie after the conclusion of Game 5 here, we're gonna be a little shocked, to say the very least. I mean, with how flippy some of these series can be, it's literally a matter of how these top teams decide to handle the pressure that they're now under. Do they want to try to play more aggressive to gain more KP? Do they want to play passive, not risking the probability of going down early instead and hoping they can outlast some of those other squads? I mean, they need to decide what is going to be the best way to handle this pressure being towards the top as close as you are to this victory.
And no matter what situation you're in, there's one thing that really helps squads out. I guess outside of 50-50ing an early fight, OKS have 2 down. There is a chance that with a Havoc, Melted Cheese clutches this up, getting aggressive themselves. This is certainly in reach. 1 knock follows through. This is the last clip, and it's not even a full one for Melted Cheese. You've got very little to work with, but a Rampage will help out, and a quick res as they back off. Could be the numbers advantage they're looking for. Instead, it's a third party. Calm go down. OKS survive, but who's coming in behind them?
We're talking about what's going on, but Calm going down here? Dia, they're tied for first right now. They just went out in 20th. They didn't handle the pressure. They are completely demolished by it. They got squashed into a pancake. That is a problem. If you are Calm right now, as good as they've been, as consistent as they've been, the entire series, going in last, a 0-point game is absolute worst case scenario for them and opens the door for some of these other squads to catch up.
And I guess fortunately enough for Calm, they get to avoid some of my ires. I would have been very confused as to why they were hanging out on the high ground. Instead, a bit of a toggle. It makes a lot more sense. Means that OKS continue the fight, but as we illustrated, they have a numbers advantage in the Rampage. Really does put in work. I'm recommending it, guys. I'm doing it now. And Odyssey go down. OKS take the contest in their second game on World's Edge and win it pretty convincingly.
Wow, this is a new team that we're looking at in terms of OKS. Went out third in our first part of World's Edge. It seems like it's certainly built for their type of play style, and the extra KP on the board certainly can't hurt their future opportunities. we're back on Meow, as we always are in the beginning of our series, Dia, because they're just fun to look at, because, you know, there's no raid this time. Horizon Juso will be playing. That is their third different legend that they are pulling out in today's series.
And when you look at Wraith, you go, okay, well, you want to get a little aggressive but have rotational capability. When you look at Caustic, you go, you want to fit in with the rest of the lobby, take 3v3 fights. And when you look at this slide down the hill, you have to say, Call Me Dada are just recklessly abandoning everything and looking for KP. They are ego checking, and you know what's crazier is that they're winning against Trojan!
Dada just goes sailing down into the tunnels like no worries in the world. Spot out Trojan. They're like, oh, hey guys, what's going on? We're gonna punch you around a little bit and come out unscathed. Dia, as you said, they've lost any sort of sanity at this point. And so we are all in, we're winning, or it's nothing.
That was a straight up disrespectful
Wow.
slide. And Trojan, credit where it is due. Call Me Dada did take the disrespectful slide, and Trojan did not punish it. Playing like they had time to spare. Gotta really respect Call Me Dada for skill checking teams, even at this point in the matches. Rolling teams, another squad that I think I'd expect to do a little bit more killing, are certainly doing that now, as it appears that Game 5 has inspired a lot of confidence in squads that where it was missing before.
Confidence, recklessness, you put it one way or another. I would call that recklessness for the sake of SEO right now. You are down, the rest of the team can come in to follow up. It'll be Adam with a nice shred through the shields, elimination, goodbye, good fellas. Dia, this is what happens in the later games of series. Teams know the amount of points that they need to get to have their desired results, and a lot of the times towards the bottom of the pack, you're gonna have to rack up that KP.
Pretty incredible to watch from rolling teams. And I've had a quiet day so far. And coming into today, they were 25th seed. They've missed out on a lot of finals, but still managed to at least secure a spot in today's. This could easily push them into the top 20 and in a much safer position to qualify for preseason quals in the next couple of weeks.
This would be a massive performance from them if they're able to do so. And speaking of teams that have been stifling up on the aggression, NPC walking on through, grabbing another KP to go their direction. Currently at 16th, if I remember correctly. A rather rough placement for what they're used to. Again, there's not much that they have to accomplish today. Getting as far as they can is the name of it so far. Well, it's been lackluster. NPC, they're okay to continue with what they've been doing.
Meanwhile, Call Me Dada, you'll remember them from full sending it towards the vaults just north of Dome. Well, they're gone now. That team ended up maybe taking a gamble that they didn't want, maybe got sent on by somebody else, but it happened darn quickly. And unfortunately for them, they won't be participating in this game anymore. Didn't even make it to placement points, as they will just have the KP to rely on. Everybody, however, who's still alive gets at least 1 point. So, survival of the most passive, it appears, in at least the 5th game.
At least the 5th game. Even the other ones as well. It's been such a slow start to every single game we've dropped down into. 5th, far and away, the most explosive of any start. We haven't even dropped teams most often until the 2nd or the 3rd circle. And now that we get to look, they're a lot more spread out. There's less teams to clog up this space, making rotations slightly easier for some times. Yet the zone is quite interesting, Dia, with the way that it's going to end up pulling teams towards the south corner.
Controllers have a really fantastic position for zones like this. They should have high ground the whole time. Cover for Atlas and Yippee is pretty rare, although there is a chance that Yippee can control launch site, and their fight against Free Sosa could determine a lot of the game. Same thing with controllers in DN. We've got 2 big engagements brewing that will likely determine the fate of the game. I do wonder when these teams will pull the trigger.
A lot of them are again, slower on the rotates, now that they know where the zone is going to be, and not pulling towards lava siphon like Colin and window cleaners initially thought, you're going to have to now move out of those POI, and there's limited opportunities for safe places to hold, which is why I won't be shocked if we see a lot of these teams take a later position in the zone, playing on the outside of it, and until they actually have no other choice but to make a move.
Octane Genetics are one of those squads playing on the low ground who will ultimately be forced to make a move. Bit of a different way of looking at it, but nonetheless, this is a team that I would keep my eye on. Octane Genetics also very much looking for the points today, because a few more placements would really impact, or rather a few more points would really impact their overall placement quite a bit. Red Dragon make their way through Geyser, and in this particular case, I was expecting them to be a little bit more aggressive with things like Crypto. Red Dragon have played very well today, but I haven't seen the trademark Crypto EMP into push. They're using this a lot more flexibly and very differently than teams even in Pro League.
Revenge right now, like a lifeline Valkyrie is it's an odd one compared to the Bangalore caustic, you're not allowed to use your eyeballs kind of thing. So then I think you can make these fast rotations. You have additional healing resources on demand should you need it, and they're just gonna book it right out there, further emphasizing how much teams value this passive play style.
One of the fascinating things about this composition, as you've illustrated, Cold Revenge do have a difficult time pushing other squads because they don't have as much forward vision. What they do have is the ability to see people who walk into their own caustic gas, or at least one of them does. So by playing with Valk, Lifeline, Caustic, you're putting a lot of unorthodox fragging pressure on your Caustic, who has to do way more damage than they would in a regular game of Apex Legends, where you see Legends like that anchoring a lot. So even just shifting composition already drastically changes the responsibilities that everybody has on a given team.
That, the play style, the expectations, and overall, like, do we want to engage on these people? And I think that Cold Revenge has kind of gotten the idea that it's tricky for them to win fights out some of these more experienced teams, so they like to try to play their hand as smart as possible, giving themselves the upper hand before they actually end up taking a battle. The second they think there's less than a 50% chance of winning, they're out of there.
I'm still looking at the south side of the map. Free Sosa pushed out a bit. Ultimately, Yippie's best choice should be to move up towards the north, barring some crazy zone pull. This south side really has a lot of pressure cooking it. Free Sosa may have overextended. Window cleaners get caught, but it is still Free Sosa and window cleaners that have some of the best positions. Yippie should be rotating north, and there's only going to be more action on the south side.
But what is with the South today? But all of our zones just love the South. The exception of one, but that's where it is, I guess. Teams should start to predict it just off of that alone, honestly. Hey, hey, you're moving on through. You got teams like Meow, Ghost, who are more towards Lava Siphon, kind of setting up there, hoping that's where the zone would end. Unfortunately, you're not that lucky, and you're going to have to move on your own accord or not. Honestly, though, they're not in one of the worst positions that you could possibly have. It's still window cleaners, Free Sosa, controllers who've been in that better spot, where as Ghost have to move quite a bit in order to get in reach of where that next zone's pulling.
This is the real test for Ghost, because in Game 4, I went, oh, I thought this was a more passive team, and suddenly they became bunker busters. If they are still that, Ghost can secure upwards of 6-7 KP on their path into zone. On the other hand, if they are in fact the passive squad from Storm Point, who just happened to have a pop-off game in round 4, then that truth is going to get exposed now.
Yeah, but in Ghost, they've made it to these end games. They've managed to take the only win so far we've had on World's Edge, and being put to the test, and this is their opportunity to break through. Calm's already been eliminated. You're less worried about that team. It's now literally just Atlas that stands in your way, who they're actually going to rotate right in front of their noses, attempting to get a better spot within this zone. Still playing on the more northern side of it. At least they're further away from the chaos that is soon in the northeastern part, where we currently have 4 teams pulled up. Meow being one of them. The Rolling Thunder really hurting any attempt that they have to push forward the zone, getting even more damaging by the second piece. Meow even managed to escape, as a matter of fact. It isn't looking likely. Ghost end up going towards them to try to take some of this fight, some of this KP. Dia, push the smart move.
Works out well for them. Meow, unfortunately, will go down as Ghost move in to gatekeep what would have been left of them. It's not a lot of KP that goes Ghost's way, but like you talk about, they get to delay a decision and pick up a point in the meanwhile. Now, however, that's going to come back to bite them. They got a point. Was it worth it to have to commit to fighting these teams? Because you cannot rotate with so many squads on your back. Calamitous takes the first initial swing, does manage to survive on a single bit of HP, and Ghost clean up Redragon as a duo. Ghost now have to deal with the other squads. This is the challenge.
Yeah, Ghost essentially put everything on the line, knowing how far they've already gotten with their current placement points. They want to rack up as much KP as possible, put as much distance between them and the other teams, and so far they're continuing to push forward. They got Purple, Evo, very close.
Oh, he
getting
sticks
even more
him.
of that. What a stick! Listening with the ordinances, fighting into the building, being a bunker buster is no easy task. It's pressure on to Bren, moving on forward. Max with another one, and it's another squad! Octane Genetics, who Ghost managed to steal all the life from.
Insta reset for Barbahar as well, and we've already seen what he can do with the Havoc. Almost takes down another. Bren peaks with one actual flesh HP left. Ghost do not quit, and they certainly do not leave their teammates behind on a swing. Calamitous rocks on forward, and Ghost have claimed so much space. Unfortunately for Bren, Caustic Gas does not care about shields, and he will have to be rezzed. Hopefully, there's a little bit more time between this engagement and the next to let Bren get back into the game, let Ghost fight as a full squad. But no, they're shot from above. Barbahar, as crazy as he goes with the Havoc, finds one knock, finds the thirst as well. Barbahar is going to die in the zone, but man, does Barbahar die honorably.
The life of heroes that Faravar and Ghost just lived, regardless of their placement. They just wiped squad after squad until they had physically no juice left in the tank to keep going forwards. It only leaves one of the first place team tied to move forwards, and that is Atlas. No KP, currently 2 of their name, blue and 1 purple. Evo Shield on their side. Resources, it's not looking good. A squad cleanup here is just what they need to do, but instead, it's Sydney who gets knocked, has to hold up onto the high ground, fighting through the caustic gas. NPC is done on out. Important fight win for Atlas.
A little close for my liking, but Atlas make it work. They're now getting sent on by controllers from the high ground. Controllers, however, have only sent a duo on forward, and that duo's on blue shields. This could be turned around very quickly by a 3-man from the low ground. Mar takes a bit of damage in return. Tryhard Thor goes down. It's a 1-for-1. Backups on the way from controllers, and Mar is sticking around.
Not giving up, never surrendering, waiting for headshot to come in with the extra assist. They managed to deny the revive altogether, and that'll be the end of Atlas's tail. Down to 3 free Sosa controllers and a single rat of D. And free Sosa, they know exactly what controllers are. They want to close in on them. They're not letting them even move towards the zone, knowing there's no direction for them to even go to. The resurrection not even happening. It's a 3 against 1. Free Sosa want to make the run all the way from the bottom to the top, Dia. It's just the rat, the one lonely player with an insurmountable task in their way, giving free Sosa the boost they need in their score.
Really excellently played at the end game. Just making sure you don't give other teams a chance to reset. I'll be honest, this was not the most complicated execution of a 3-squad finish that Free Sosa could have gone through, but their positioning earlier made this easy by moving through launch site, by taking control of it away from other teams that might have had priority. They get the high ground, evidently get a care package to work with as well, and it turns into a very simple to execute game. I can't help but applaud play like that, as it removes a lot of RNG from the rest of the lobby, and leaves other teams with scraps.
If you can slow the game down enough to make it as simple as Free Sosa just did, you've done something right. I mean, even if they made it look as easy as it was at the tail end, they still got to that point and have made massive steps forwards in comparison to the very first half of their series, barely squeaking their way into the finals from the semis, mind you. So the fact that they're making as strong of a performance as they have here in the second half of the series is going to be important for the results. Enough to take first place? Likely no. Speaking of that, let's see where our three-way tie ended up getting decided. After Game 5 came set and done, it was a rough game for Calm. 0 points. In fact, they're dropping down to 4th. And it is now Ghost who sits wearing the crown.
And although Atlas survived for longer, Ghost were just more active. I think we can agree. They did live up to that Bunker Buster title that we set for them. Or rather, that they set for themselves in Game 4. They didn't win, but man, did they kill a lot of people on their way in.
And how about Free Sosa as well? Again, rough start to today. Now finding themselves in 3rd. They did the exact same thing, where they're racking up this KP in a squad where really they don't have much of a target on their back. There's little threat that they've seen running Gibraltar throughout the day. Dia now in 3rd place and in reasonable distance of Atlas, of Ghost. I mean, it's still so close. Game 6 has the ability to completely change the top of the leaderboard right now.
Yeah, Ghost, Atlas, Free Sosa, and Calm all have not won a Challenger circuit yet. Window Cleaners to be included in that makes our top 5 all the scarier, especially because, well, some of them, like you say, Free Sosa, have just come up recently. All of those 5 squads can secure their spot in the preseason quals with just 1 game.
It's all that it is going to take, and even if you're looking down to Window Cleaners, Trojan, it's not that much of a difference, so it's going to come down. Game 6. One more round. World's Edge shall be the battlefield. Ghost may be sitting at the top for now. That may not last long at all. We've had an exciting day here with the Emea Challengers Circuit. We're going to end it all. One more game coming up right after this break. It all comes down to this. We have one more game coming up for the remainder of our Challengers Circuit matchup today. I get you, Dia. You gotta stand up. You gotta stretch. You have to get all of the excitement out to have a calm start to our Game 6. Teams are feeling the pressure. We're feeling the pressure. I'm getting way too hyper over here. We all need to take a breath, to take the relaxing moment. One of our teams here guaranteeing themselves a spot within the upcoming Pro League qualifier, and not to mention the circuit points that come along with it.
Right, it's very true. Like you said, the excitement has me riveted, but it's got to have a lot of teams on edge. And one of the things that we've got to balance in end games like this is teams that are on the edge. Some will choose to take that and play extremely calculated. This can be the highest quality game they play all split. Some teams will take that and they will break under the pressure. And they will run at you, and they will try and kill you, and they can make your day all the more difficult. Great teams are those that understand the real psychological trouble that a lot of other squads are in, and are able to best utilize that to their advantage. Being big and scary, using that sort of lion tactic that we talked about earlier to make certain that when they take fights, they aren't third-partied. When they're just rotating, they're not sent on by a team that just wants KP.
It's this desperation, these survival instincts are starting to kick in for many of these teams, which can lead to a scrappier gameplay. That leads to more aggressive playstyle. My mind still flashes back to when Call Me Data full sent it onto the likes of Trojan, not a fear in the world. That's what we're expecting to happen here in game number 6. We need to see some of these comebacks. These teams, they need that differential, particularly if I'm looking at somebody such as Atlas. Where's the not Atlas, Calm, where their mental recovery is. You go out 20th when the first 2 minutes of game 5, and now are in 4th after sitting in the top 3, top 2, the entirety of today's series. How can you make a comeback? Can you close the gap against those who stand up in front of you?
It's a tough call to make because, like you say, closing the gap in this end game really, I want to say impossible, but it's not technically true. But it is what I'll say impossible to control entirely on your own. A lot of other squads have their own games to play, and while you can do your best, that is all that you can do. You cannot control what other people are going to play like. I've actually had this debate pretty recently, pretty frequently, where I'm of the belief that if you are the best team in a lobby, you're guaranteed a top 3 slot. But I don't think you're guaranteed to win, ever, even if you were the best team in a given lobby. You can increase your odds, match point may change that, but top 3 is likely where you're going to end if you are the best. Right now, those best squads of today are Ghost, Atlas, and Free Sosa. Were we to end here, Calm have made a really nice argument, though, and I'm loving the way that Calm are using Valkyrie where no other squads in Challenger Circuit really are.
Particularly back on Stormpoint too, the Valkyrie didn't really break, but it was a make or break point for their playstyle, their series. There were several of these rotations that would have otherwise been impossible. They would have been game ending had they not had that Valkyrie. They just haven't gotten its click here. As soon as we've transitioned to a new map, it's completely gone. All of that advantage, we can't see it. These teams play more inside the buildings. There's less of this open cover that you really have to traverse, and it's coming back to bite them, Dia.
It is, and when Calm pick Valk, I do think that, especially on World's Edge, and we saw it on Stormpoint as you were just illustrating, a little bit more of an insurance pick than anything else. In any individual game, it may not give you game-changing value, but when there are a bunch of squads crowding up the way that you want to rotate, when nobody else seems to be taking the next zone proactively, as we've seen fell a lot of teams, that's when Valk gains a lot of value because you're able to bypass the traffic jams of, I'll be honest, people who are making suboptimal decisions in front of you.
Dang, you had to call them out like that.
Yeah, it's not specific, but you know who you are. Yeah.
You know who you are, but we're not going to call you out. And you're 100% right, too. Atlas, Ghost, these other teams that have been playing towards the top have been the ones specifically who start on the edges of the games. And when you start on the edge, there's easily a higher probability of you having to make these larger moves later on in the day. So when we see teams like Atlas running the Valkyrie, and now Calm Taishin picking up the flying character for himself, I mean, these are the moves of teams that know that they're playing at a point where it's a risky objective, that having this asset, this escape route is vital.
Giving a moment for those G7 shots to land. Entity is fully dialed in right now. Volty thankfully does come in to clean up, but this contest at Overlook seems to be going the way of the window cleaners. Cold Revenge not nearly so lucky as they book it back towards Overlook and hopefully towards a res, as they do have Lifeline and Crafters.
Again, early contest, Dia. We talked about him, game number 5. Explosive, to say the very least, but if these teams spot each other after they have a reasonable amount of loot, even Evo shields, that's going to be big. But what we do want to talk about is the zone, how it's actually landed over towards Lava Fissure, similar to last time. But look at which teams are currently inside it. Atlas, particular, one of the notable ones.
Their position in Lava Fissure, am I reading this right? Yes, does have a ring console there as well. So they actually, once they hit this, should be able to stick around and get even further information. The only reason we'd see Atlas move is if they think off the first 2 zone reads that they know without a doubt where the next zone is going. Odyssey and OKS still actually fighting this out. Long contest going on up here, and OKS grabbed a bit of the high ground for themselves.
Bit of deja vu, if you guys remember the last time these two teams faced off at the start of game number 5. It was OKS who ended up coming out on top of that engage after a wonderful decision, courtesy of Melted Cheese. But this time, they're trying to match Odyssey more on this high ground particularly. The scan does guarantee where everyone is. All white shields across the board, limited resources. Chico just trying to find a safe spot to regroup with their team.
The gold helmet pickup on Chico is really helping as well. Odyssey have so much more cover as a result, but third parties can absolutely happen.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised to see Odyssey sticking around for as long as they have, long enough to get ults, because it just gives more time for a team like Calm to come up from below. The insta-knock from Chico does open things up well. There's one down and thirsted. Lets Odyssey move on in for the kill. 1v2, and that one is on Flesh. OKS go down. Odyssey stick the res. And Calm are not yet there, so Odyssey will survive.
Odyssey are going to move on, and it's said incredibly risky to stick along for a sheer amount of time that we saw from Odyssey, but you get the reward in the end, a high-risk, high-reward play. That's what we're going to see in Game 6 from many teams. Ghost, in particular, took advantage of such a play style in Game 5, while finishing top 8, I believe. They just wrapped the floor with KP. What is that? Taylor absolutely ending into the likes of Ghost. Oh, that's ridiculous play here. Now Ghost, they know that they have the advantage. The caustic gas is here as well. Full scan coming in. I mean, there's not much more that this team could really want.
And it was Goodfellas that really changed the course of this fight, moving up on the zip line, giving Meow no good way out. At this point, Goodfellas and Ghost both have what they came for. Nobody has to stick around, and Goodfellas will, quite nicely, retreat back onto the low ground, where they get the opportunity to look at next zone, maybe try and take a different fight with Ghost, but plan things out from a better position than Meow had, because let's be honest,
Yeah.
if the position was good, it wouldn't have been that easy.
No, absolutely not. Ghost, incredibly strong team, but the positioning, they knew they were favored. I mean, they're not a squad that will take a fight that's less than a 50-50% chance of winning earlier on. Ghost can continue just holding on to this high ground. They'll have a vantage point not too far from this zone should they really need to make a move, and with no concern of teams realistically being behind them right now. Ghosts know where the bar is set currently in that first place. Survival of the fittest, surviving longest here. It's going to likely be one of the key strategies that can help them retain that position.
Unfortunately for Ghost, they are going to have to move on to low ground at some point. Goodfellas already have Skyhook, and so Ghost is likely going to go out towards the western side and then move down to Fisher. It'll be fortunately not crowded, but it also doesn't give them the opportunity to pick up nearly as much loot on their way to Atlas.
No, not at all. And this is going to be big for Ghost because they just weren't working off much to begin with, and going towards the outside of the map instead of straight through, where they would eventually meet teams like Atlas, who are currently crowded around Lava Fisher. I mean, this is an absolute bloodbath that we're about to watch. Taishin as well, playing from the high ground column, needing big numbers in this game and taking an early fight, something we particularly haven't seen from them so far, understanding where the risks and haven't been one to take it. And Taishin checking the scape out down below, claiming the KP. Team was hunted above.
I will say the nice thing about the Calm is that no matter what their position is, you can rely on, if you're walking into a 3v3, you probably have the firepower to win it. If you're putting me in Challenger Circuit, that's not true. I'm walking up to fights and I'm going, okay, we really have to have the best position possible. It cannot be a 50-50 even fight, because I've got to make up my advantages somehow. Calm do not have that. They are very willing to take fights that appear even just because their firepower gives them the advantage. And in this case, for ruling teams, the zone and a numbers difference is definitely giving them the advantage. Taking the shields off of one, or very nearly, should mean that rolling teams collect another KP soon, because let's be honest, where are you going to go?
Yeah, good fellas, I'm sorry. This, as good as it's been to watch it here, it's a bad ending is waiting for you at the end of that mates, but look at this, it's Ghost, who hasn't yet to really move off that high ground, and instead claimed another one. The shots from Ren ring true, another ultimate online for them to gather even more of that necessary information. Goodfellas eventually shall fall, as we were tracking that previous story, whereas Ghosts only just beginning.
I got to imagine they're running low on... Oh, okay. They're using Phoenix kits for, I suppose, the longer time that they know they have at this point. Normally you'll see Phoenix kits used in the avoidance of other meds, but in this particular case, I think Ghost playing really smart or recognizing that other teams aren't going to push them. Got to applaud that. Octane Genetics and Atlas coexisting by the ring console, so neither of them should have access just yet to the information as to where the zone is actually going. Most people have sat Fisher.
Whoa.
And Shiny, as is so often the case, it just ain't Fisher. It just ain't. And we are moving out to Countdown, where DN get to sit in their villainous chair, pet their cat, and laugh.
DNs are like, haha, big brain moment here, and they're the only ones that have predicted that Countdown is where they're going to go next. I can imagine everyone who is currently set up on Lava Fisher is like, oh gosh, dang it, we gotta move again. The ring's so hard to predict these days. It does open up for teams that are rotating in from the east side of the map that we're seeing now. Like, we're seeing Horizon starting to get a move on, catch a stick, and the rest of their squad kind of on the move. I mean, this is such an aggressive play. Call me Data, clearly sticking to their play, or their game plan from game number 5, and are both sending it onto teams they have advantage. The Horizon ult thrown within this nowhere for this team to go, except just take the beating of Call Me Data. Cold revenge, so sweet for this team.
That was such a quick fight. Fast 3v3s like that are honestly very rarely punished, but a few spare thoughts from Trojan getting thrown their way, or I should say Nemesis shots, take down one and open up the chance for a full fight to come in. It does look like Trojan are pretty split, so the delay and the reset that will happen on the other side of the engagement for Call Me Data should mean that everyone backs off and it's just a little bit of Evo traded back and forth, but Call Me Data really impressing with the way that they used Horizon, and Cold Revenge underestimating the power of that legend now that she's been out of the meta for a while.
It's a blip back to the past metas that clearly haven't been forgotten, like squads such as Call Me Data. And I believe there was one other team that was running a Horizon here today, but we haven't really gotten that much of a glimpse of. And that's really for a good reason. There's only one team that has gotten value out of the Horizon, and it's been Call Me Data. So we'll have to see them later on in this series if they can make it to zone. It's challenging when teams like Trojan continue to gatekeep like they are. You throw even more smoke in. There's no better way for them to see exactly what players like Remix Flowers like to post on up. Nice damage on through. That's a good buy for our good buddy Chico. Another team that has been surprising here within these last couple of rounds. Odyssey, you know, they might have taken that early dent in their record in the previous parts of World's Edge, but have started to be on the upwards trend.
I'm already smiling. Call me Dada to try and get
way.
aggressive, but Trojan are not a squad to be underestimated. They did have one hanging back covering their retreat, and as a result, it's Call Me Dada that have got to heal up and ultimately disengage once more. Small victory for Trojan to be able to push out of zone in full vision of Call Me Dada, still pick up KP and get back alive, and that is all due to good planning and good team play.
And not to mention that, too, Dia, look at the shields that they currently have. Purple and red, and as many teams that are currently alive right now, that's massive. If they want to keep going on just a full-out body slam teams, I mean, this is the time to do so when you're up in terms of the resources. The closer you're going to get to the zone where all of these teams have been closer to Lava, Fisher, now rotated Countdown, and there's simply less access they have to this. Like Atlas, for example, only lose all across the board.
Ghost on blues as well, but playing aggressive in Countdown. They're rotating through on the north side and don't have verticality like, say, a Horizon to make their way up onto height. So instead, we'll have to take the slow way, heal, hope that a team on high ground makes a mistake, because as long as Ghost are the focus, they cannot effectively play the game.
Not at all. I mean, if somebody is able to identify that that is Ghost right there, instant target on their backs being in that first place position. And as they start to get closer together, we're in the majority of teams surrounding the Countdown area. The center of Countdown, where actually exactly where the zone is centered around, not much to play around. So there's no reason for teams to further instant zones forwards and move on through. But if we look at the luck of the draw, it's Calm that goes down. Dia, that might as well just put their entire hopes of winning to bed.
And Call Me Dada continue their rampage. This is a real important note. The team that was, and I will say it again, playing with reckless abandon in game number 5. We're in 12th place coming into game 6 and have already cleaned up 2 teams. They're likely to make it more before the night is out as they move into the next engagement. DN fight things out in Countdown, where we know they've been set up for so long. This is where DN really get to benefit from their early positioning. When everyone's got to leave Fisher, they get to clean up the kills.
You know the funniest thing, Dia? Is that DN predicted the first zone, right? Being over towards Countdown. They've also predicted the second one over by Canyon Pass. And the biggest thing about this right now is there is no other squad in their general direction. Everybody has to come towards them, and that's going to be huge, especially holding on to this Watson, the little high ground that is to remain. This final circle is going to start closing in relatively soon. More of these teams, Ghost, for example, have pulled up alongside Red Dragon, yet neither pushing in their direction, being at completely different levels of this lava siphon point.
Red Dragon just have to wait out a lot of teams around them, because most squads are going to start fighting, whether it be DN and the squads that have to push up towards them, or on the low ground, Window Cleaners and Odyssey and Ghost. Bunches of teams are stacked in around Red Dragon. Odyssey, actually, one of the ones to go down. So with Crypto, you should be able to keep track of a lot of that information and defend effectively, hoping for a third party perhaps a little bit later on. Yes, Taskmaster, those are indeed 2 different caustic team trap things laid down. You do not want to mess with this.
No. Big no-no on Red Dragon. Let the red lights flash on that, so. In Red Dragon, they know they're not alone for certain. There's only so many places, 10 teams can be located. It's round 5 about to go through. We take a look at that circle. Guess who's there, Dia? Our good friends, DN.
Is Winkler really doing it again? Because remember, we saw
No way.
Winkler really rev up in game number 4. And while they didn't win the game, Winkler went kind of crazy. Might do it again. Needs to do it soon if Red Dragon are, in fact, going to fight them. Because there's not a lot of wiggle room when a team like Red Dragon decides to fight. They've still got Crypto ult to start engagements inside the building at a health advantage, and they could pull that out just now if they want to take a game-winning fight.
Oh. That is going to be the opponents coming towards them. D and Red Dragon hold up in the same room. Doesn't have the Watson necessarily to push on up. So, I mean, Red Dragon, they're still taking a passive angle, something we don't usually see from this team. They've been the ones to start fights, oftentimes end them, but the pressure of the 6th game starting to get to them.
I tell you why. It's because they have what they need. Right now, you don't actually need to kill DN. You need a spot in zone. Red Dragon have that. Even Ghost on the low ground have that. As much as it may not look super advantageous, they've already, simply by surviving, collected so many placement points during the course of this game. Teams like Atlas and Window Cleaners are going to be forced into sharing space with Ghost soon, but as long as they survive, Ghost will be the ones to come out on top, even without KP.
Ghosts right now are looking stronger. Chances of winning almost unstoppable. They've had incredible KP so far. Only 1 or 2 more fights really remains for this team going forwards. They are surrounded though. They're gonna have Window Cleaners at their backs, Red Dragon at their front. Already losing out on their Caustic player. It's gonna be a tough finish going on forward, but seeing Atlas already down, Dia, that is them basically securing their spots within the first place. While they might come to an end here, they may have gained the points necessary to get them a Pro League qualifier.
Oh, it's only Window Cleaners who, from the top 5, are still alive.
Yep.
Red Dragon are looking down on them now. And if Red Dragon shut down Window Cleaners, there is just no way. Even if Window Cleaners survive, I'll be honest, it is not looking good for them to get first place. But they can at least advance their position into a top 3-1.
It's a brutal spot. Window Cleaners have the most to win, but also the most to lose right now. Red Dragon know it. They're going to take the aggressive drop. They weren't ready at all. The aggressive chip damage is going to come in key. And over the end for the Window Cleaners go spot secured.
Red Dragon understand that this is the one squad they had to free up, and now they've got an uncontested west side of zone. Yippee hold the bottom ground of Countdown, have a little bit to play with, but should be unpushable. There's a good chance Yippee actually find a way to win this game and get themselves out of 17th where they started it, but it will require smart use of the low ground, and watching Red Dragon, who have played this so smart during the course of Game 6.
If you want to come back into this series, make a mark, it is going to be far from easy. Exchanging these chip shots, not going to do much. This high ground, really going to have to find a way to play down towards this lower side. All of the teams in half, only half really, of this final circle. Once that starts to close, it can be more of an issue. The rolling teams are the ones getting rolled themselves. But not before they grab D and set them to their end. After a strong performance here in the back half of this series, only 3 squads are going to remain, and they're not full ones by any means.
These are my favorite end games. This is what I look forward to. Rolling teams have a duo on high ground. They can't really push onto either side. It gives a lot of onus onto Red Dragon and Yippee, who can win the game from their position, but Red Dragon are getting greedy. Red Dragon want to force rolling teams off of the high ground and into Yippee instead, and rolling is doing all they can to push everyone back, keep Red Dragon at bay, taking the focus off Yippee.
Oh, this is all that they wanted to do. It's the bait, it's the distraction, and knocking Oz's and Preston as Red Dragon down completely. The wave goes through, but it's 2v3. Where Yippee currently have the advantage, but not the position.
No way,
Bazaar! They're gonna try to take it anyway. Bazaar, the absolute laser of a weapon, and he's still going. The damage that they were able to do despite the advantage, Diva. They managed to pull it together. Rolling teams are going to claim the 6th and final game here in the series in glorious fashion.
Watch that again. Bizarre. starts the fight with the knock on Red Dragon, starts another fight with the knock on Yippee. It is Bazaar on Bangalore that makes the
Wow.
difference with Havoc and Volt in the end game. Having a fragger like that dialed in Game 6, that is rare and extraordinary to watch.
I really wish we could have seen more of what Bazaar could bring to the table, and it's so unfortunate that that was Game 6 for them. Really a team that came alive. They found their second wind to push forwards, and it gave them the win. Rolling teams, and it's enough points to push on ahead. But Dia, I think that we really do need to talk about who made it to the top. It was almost decided about halfway through our Game 6, given where those past points previously stood. Let's go ahead, take a peek at who those final victors are going to be of today. We've had ups and downs throughout all of our 6 games. Strong starts on Storm Point for teams such as Atlas, and then moving over to our games in World's Edge, completely flipped on its head.
That's what I was most impressed by, was when we went on to World's Edge, it really felt like the gameplay from this squad took a step up, and this is me like hoping that I've done the math right? But just like you, I was watching that last game and was so impressed with the way that Ghost had managed to really nicely position themselves and, as we said, earn themselves the title of Bunker Busters.
They've earned themselves the title. We had teams that made their stories heard today, gave them new chapters to look out to. But at the end of the day, Dia, only one can stand up on the top after our 6 games of competition. Let's go ahead and take a peek at who that is going to be for the rest of today. I've loved seeing all of these squads start to come alive. When I said it is the ones from the undead who make the victory. They have claimed the crown and a spot in the pro qualifiers.
Ghost came into today 22nd seed so far, and now have locked themselves in a spot in the Pro League quals. It's likely that we'll see them in finals again, because there is only one challenger circuit left to prepare in the best environment possible, a real tournament where people are giving it their all to make it into the Pro League quals. This was, again, very impressive performance for them. I do want to see them play again on Storm Point, though, because World's Edge looks so good, and if you want to be a Pro League team, Ghost have got to give us a little bit more on Storm Point.
Consistency wasn't their forte today, to put it mildly, and the Ghost, they had some incredibly strong performances to make up for some of the slightly lackluster ones that we saw in other areas of today. But nonetheless, beating out some of the best teams that you are going to find within the EMEA region, looking for that chance to prove yourself amongst the best of the best, and having this opportunity, guaranteeing the Pro League spot, you're just one step away from fighting against the big dogs in the actual Pro League itself, Dia.
You know, you mentioned that consistency may not have been their strength. I think we can extend that to all of the teams that played today. We did have a few repeat offenders in the top couple of squads, but for the most part, this was a very inconsistent day, and I'm going to hand that largely to this being the first challenger circuit since we got the the first update with the perks, because that did change a surprising amount for teams, and we had a lot of squads that hadn't made it into the finals before, and that means a lot of unknown variables for teams that did show up again. It was NPC, Atlas, Trojan, Red Dragon, Calm, and Call Me Dada. All those teams had been in the finals at least once before, and if you take out Call Me Dada, 5 of those teams had been in every final so far. Everyone else is new.
And it's a big point to notice. There's been little competition to observe, little time to practice, and all of these massive changes in the game. And it's those who are learning to work their way around some of these new adjustments, their play styles, perhaps even some of the legends that they're selecting. I mean, there's these small, intricate things that need to be adjusted, even if we're not seeing it on the main part of the team. And when we look at the leaderboard, that's really where it's going to shine through throughout the rest of the day today. While Ghost had been on top of the leaderboard, I mean, we had other teams like even for rolling teams made their way back up. Free Sosa with a bottom team that barely qualified throughout the semifinals and made their name known. I mean, Dia, this is what the potential, the future of Apex Legends has to hold on the competitive side.
That is my favorite thing about days like this, about Challenger Circuit, is that all these players do hold the future of competitive Apex in their hands. Big shout out to Atlas, who, again, after a composition change, have managed to make this just a 2-point difference between them and qualifying themselves for the Pro League quals at the end of Challenger Circuit. Rolling teams really did come in and make a great argument for themselves. They've clearly got mechanical capability, but looking at the rest of Challenger Circuit, I do want to pose the question, who doesn't?
Yeah.
Mechanical capability is one thing. Rolling teams still need a little bit more to push them into a more consistent top team. Window Cleaners had a great angle on Macro. Free Sosa, even with their oddball compositions, clearly have got something figured out that the other teams do not.
And that's the most fascinating part, Dia, is even when I was doing research a little bit more yesterday on a lot of these teams, Free Sosa came up, they snuck their way into 10th place in the semifinals, making it here today with relatively unknown names on their roster and little to show from their success, even in the quarterfinals, squeaking their way in. But as you said, the results have shown they've figured out pieces of the game that other opponents just haven't yet. Even squads like NPC, Trojan, this is their first time competing with these new squads. Even if it may have been more of a practice, more placements for teams like them, it doesn't change the fact that they were really never on our radar amongst the top contentions for today.
And I implore you, if you saw something here during today's games or just in player streams of your own, go follow these players, watch their competitive journeys, because they are, as we've already stated, very much the future of competitive Apex, and it means the world to them and to us to give them your support as they continue developing and supporting the Challenger Circuit.
And realistically, what we talk about here in the Challenger Circuit is making that next batch of pros. For some, it's their rebirth, their refresh. You have players that previously were in Pro League that have come back down to the Challenger Circuit to make their mark here. You have brand new people. We had some 18-year-olds that were competing for the very first time in competitive Apex of this level and have given themselves an opportunity to start their very pro career. Challenger Circuit is where we can continue to cultivate this talent, give them that spotlight to perform, but it does come off a lot of this audience support, which is where we really want to thank people that were able to stream this. Thank you, like, for EA, for Versus, for putting on this production, for all of us to get these highlights, to have all of these people show us what they have. India, if this is where future of Apex is gonna go, I mean, I just can't wait to see where it actually ends up.
Certainly been very exciting tonight. I'm gonna hit you with one. Thank you, Tiny Shiny, because it's been really enjoyable to cover these games. Fortunately, they're not done. We've still got even more going on in North America, and while it won't be us, make no mistake, you won't want to miss the developing talent there.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. They have so much to show in both regions. EMEA might be done. You can shed a little tear, but in just a couple of hours, we're going to be back with our NA competition as well. Some new casters on the desk. Dia, it was a pleasure to work with you as well. I greatly enjoyed our time here. Shout out to Versus once again to putting on this production for the day. And we're going to go ahead, see the rest of you back here for our NA Challenger Circuit competition in just a little while.